Chapter 648. What kind of person could think of such a thing? As for what Zhang Feng said about the treasure of the academy, the 9 imperial scholars and the 9 generals, he automatically ignored it. This kid just liked to show off. But he was not sure. After all, what Zhang Feng said just now was too terrifying. Although he admitted that Zhang Feng was talented, how much could Qing Chimo and the others learn? It would be good if they could learn a little. However, he was still deeply attracted by the magical military science. After all, this thing, if he thought carefully, seemed to be able to be combined with Zhang Feng until now, such as the strategy to deal with the Turkic Tubo and the other countries, as well as the plan to devise strategies. Although it seemed to be national policy, it was very similar to this so-called military science. After that, he talked about the 8 waters, fine salt, and other legendary things. In fact, in the end, it was all about careful observation in life that could be done. However, not a single person was able to see through it. This was a little scary. However, what Li Shiming was most interested in right now was to personally take a look at this so-called military science book. If there was a book, then no matter how much it would cost, he would get it. What was this thing that was locked in the small cabinet? This was the heirloom of the Li family. Li Shiming could not help but pour a bowl of wine for Zhang Feng and hand it to Zhang Feng. This scene made Zhang Feng very suspicious. What? Come Fengzi, let's drink? Although Zhang Feng was suspicious, he still drank a bowl of wine with Li Shiming. When Zhang Feng was almost finished, Li Shiming rubbed his hands and asked, Fengzi, what is this military science you said? Can you tell me? How could Zhang Feng not know what Li Shiming was holding back? Seeing this, he folded his hands and asked, What? Are you going to change careers and join the army? You're already so old. Even though we're partners in the academy, I still won't accept you. If news of this were to spread out, saying that I, Zhang Feng, accepted a good brother, a good elder brother, to come to the White Deer Academy to learn, wouldn't my backbone be broken? Well, no, I just want to hear it. Isn't it because I have nothing to do after drinking? Let's just take it as a toast. Moreover, giving pointers to the world and drinking together, what a wonderful thing this is. Zhang Feng heard this and felt that it made a little sense. He smacked his lips and pointed to the kitchen. You want to hear it? There is a pot of braised meat on the stove. Go get it, I am brewing it. Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Shiming got up and rushed into the kitchen. If others were to see this scene, they would be scared out of their wits. The emperor was actually in a small tavern, and in a small tavern in Chang'an city at that, being ordered around by a shopkeeper. Anyone who saw this would definitely think that they were dreaming. However, this was not important to Li Shiming. After all, in this small tavern, he only treated himself as Zhang Feng's elder brother, a good brother. Furthermore, if anyone were to find out about Zhang Feng's godly skills, not to mention getting him to serve a pot of food, even if he had to empty a chamber pot, there would still be people willing to do so. What was this? What Zhang Feng was going to talk about was a type of military knowledge that had never been mentioned in military books. Not long later, Li Shiming brought out the fine salt bowl and placed it on the table. He even placed a large amount of beer and white wine on the table. Then he sat at the seat closest to Zhang Feng and looked at Zhang Feng. If it weren't for the fact that Zhang Feng's foot was on the stool, he would have wanted to sit beside Zhang Feng. At this moment, Zhang Feng ate a piece of pork intestine and said unhurriedly, Actually, I have a different set of ideas about military knowledge here. Furthermore, for something to appear in my White Deer College, I can guarantee that this is definitely something that has never been seen before in history. It's like this. Wait, I'll call someone in to record it. When Li Shiming saw that Zhang Feng was about to start nagging again, he hurriedly interrupted Zhang Feng. He rushed to the front of the small tavern and shouted, Gizi, come quickly. Little Gizi, who was hiding in the dark, trembled. He hurriedly tidied himself up and appeared in the small tavern like a normal person. Quickly record every word that Brother Zhang Feng says. If you dare to miss a single word, go back and break one of your legs. Little Gizi's face turned pale. He hurriedly called in 3 little eunuchs to help. Then, while Zhang Feng was bragging and talking about this matter, one of them hurriedly recorded the emperor's words while the other 2 recorded Zhang Feng's words. Even so, the 3 of them were drenched in sweat. F*ck this beast. Can't you speak more slowly? Zhang Feng rambled on for a long time. Li Shimin was also annoyed. However, he didn't dare to interrupt. He could only continuously pour wine into Zhang Feng's mouth. After a quarter of an hour, Zhang Feng finally spoke eloquently about modern military knowledge and a set of ideas about military training. When Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Shimin was completely dumbfounded. In his mind, there was only one sentence that kept repeating over and over again. Heavens! Soldiers can be trained like this? If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the things we learned before are all dog's hit? Chapter 649. 2 hours later. After telling the story, Zhang Feng was finally knocked to the ground by Li Shimin's beer. Looking at Zhang Feng, who was sleeping and snoring, Xiao Tianyu waved his hand. Li Shimin waved his hand in shock. In an instant, 2 maids disguised as maids appeared at the door. They hurriedly helped Zhang Feng to the backyard to wash up. If Zhang Feng was sober, he would never dare to fall asleep. No matter how drunk he was, he had to hold on. After all, how could the maids who could follow Li Shimin and serve Li Shimin be ugly? Moreover, 2 of them were serving him in the bath. This was however, this was not important. Li Shimin looked at the information recorded on the thick sheets of paper in his hand, and his hands could not help trembling. Good Gizi, you did well. You 2 did well too. Come and reward these 2 eunuchs. As Li Shimin spoke, the Jinwu guards hurriedly appeared and broke the necks of the 2 eunuchs who were kneeling on the ground to express their gratitude. Little Gizi seemed to have been aware of this, or he seemed to be used to it. After all, what was this about? This was a big secret. If someone with ulterior motives had the information in Li Shimin's hands, then the Tang dynasty would be in danger. Li Shimin absolutely did not want to see this happen. Little Gizi knew. After dealing with the 2 eunuchs, Li Shimin turned to look at Zhang Feng, who was being washed by 2 maids in a big pot with a burning fire, and said lightly, "Today, you 2 stay and serve him well." After that, Li Shimin hurriedly left. After all, he always felt that holding such a thing in his hand was as heavy as Mount Tai. When he walked out of the tavern, Li Shimin let out a deep breath. He plunged into the palanquin that had arrived in a hurry and left. Little Gizi stared deeply at Zhang Feng with a complicated expression. "Brat, you're really lucky to be able to get the emperor's favor." Xiao Gizi was Li Shimin's personal servant. He naturally knew how important Zhang Feng was to Li Shimin. Moreover, in Xiao Gizi's opinion, the emperor was always alone, especially after the incident at the Xuanwu Gate. The emperor became even more lonely. He was even a little depressed. After that, the emperor went through the Wei River Alliance, which was the last straw that broke Li Shimin's back. However, these were all things before Zhang Feng appeared. After Zhang Feng's appearance, not to mention the emperor, the current Chang'an city, and even the entire Tang dynasty, became vigorous and different. For example, the previous Tang dynasty was like an old man covered in scars. After Zhang Feng's appearance, the whole thing changed. Although Xiao Gizi couldn't say anything, he always felt that everything in the world was in the emperor's hands. Xiao Gizi gently closed the door of Zhang Feng's tavern, told a Jinwu guard to guard Zhang Feng all night, and hurriedly followed Li Shimin's palanquin. In the palanquin, Li Shimin looked at the things in his hands again and again, as if he wanted to engrave every word Zhang Feng said in his mind. He was born in the army. For the first 12 years he was the Prince of Qin, the young Master Li that everyone envied. Since the Taiyuan rebellion, he had become the Prince of Qin that everyone feared. It could be said that he spent the first 10 years of his life studying all kinds of ancient books. Then for the next 10 years, he spent his days on horseback killing people or studying military books. It was only after the Black Tortoise Gate that he truly became an emperor. However, he still had the temperament of a soldier in his bones. He knew all the training methods in the army like the back of his hand. But what did he see today? He actually saw a military training concept that he had never seen before. Cold resistance, diving ability, running with weights, rapid marching, lying on wooden stakes, and so on. What were these? Although it seemed to be useless in a military camp, in his impression, didn't soldiers train and fight on the drill ground? However, in Zhang Feng's military training book he faintly felt that fighting was secondary. The most important thing was the arrangement of the formation, the overall combat ability of the team, and the individual ability. Although these seemed a little strange, after Li Shiming thought about it carefully, he was shocked to find that if he used 100 soldiers to train according to this method, they would not be able to do much. At that time, they would not need any formations. They would only need to use the formations that they had trained to cooperate with, and they would be able to charge and kill 1,000 top-notch veterans. The result would be a complete victory for these 100 people. Li Shiming couldn't help but be aghast. There weren't many soldiers who had fought. If he counted all the soldiers in his mind, there would be at most 300,000 soldiers. Moreover, they were spread all over the north, Yuzhou Longyu, and other places. If all the people in the military camps learned this thing, then he would. Li Shiming didn't dare to think about it. He was shocked to discover that if those 100,000 soldiers were trained according to Zhang Feng's training method, they would only need 3 months of hard work. 300,000 soldiers could be used as 800,000 or even 1 million soldiers. Moreover, what was more terrifying was that Zhang Feng hadn't mentioned his impenetrable shield and his invincible spear. If he added these, then... Chapter 650. Old Hey, can you King hurry up? You're dawdling like a girl. The next morning, in Cheng Yaojin's residence, Yuqigong's loud voice reverberated in the huge duke's residence, causing all the servants to tremble in fear. In the courtyard, Yuqigong, Qin Qiong and Qin Shubao, who had changed into casual attire, were waiting anxiously like a black tower. Ever since they found out about Zhang Feng's incident 2 days ago, their hearts had already flown to Zhang Feng's little tavern. However, because of Tubo's incident, they did not dare to be careless. They could only suppress the restlessness in their hearts and wait. However, this wait was unbearable. During this period, they had also inquired about Zhang Feng. When they found out that the miraculous porridge with bone-strengthening powder and chicken, duck, and pig's gizzard was made by Zhang Feng, how could they sit still? Behind them, there were tens of thousands of brothers who were starving. How could such a good thing be given to the damned commoners and let the soldiers starve? That was why after the morning court meeting ended, the two of them couldn't wait to carry Cheng Yaojin all the way back to the duke's public house. The moment they entered, they took off their official robes and pointed at two Cheng Yaojin who were about the same size as them, and helped them change into their robes. After dressing up like this, Yuqigong, who was already ferocious and had a face full of curly beard, really looked like a nouveau riche. It was just that he looked like a bandit who made a fortune. Qin Qiong was slightly better. After all, he was born handsome. Although he was old and wore a military uniform all year round, when he put on the brocade robes, he instantly looked like a businessman. Amidst Yuqigong's angry shouts and curses, Cheng Yaojin dawdled out of the room. He patted the brand-new jade belt on his big belly and reluctantly stretched. "Let's go. You're so impatient. I've already said that this kid is still sleeping. You don't believe me? Let's go eat the northwest wind." Just like that, the three of them were too lazy to even ride horses. After all, those things were too ostentatious. Just like that, Cheng Yaojin and Yuqigong continued on their way, cursing and swearing. The shocked crowd was forced to retreat, thinking that bandits had entered the city. Although it was still early in the morning market of Chang'an city was still bustling with activity. However, there were many people selling, and as for the people buying, there were basically not many people. The Guangzhong people had a bad habit. He didn't know where it came from. Early in the morning, he would carry a teapot or a birdcage and wander around the streets. When he met an acquaintance, he would brag about it and then walk away. Although their stomachs were growling from hunger, they still couldn't get rid of their bad habit of wandering around. When Yuqigong's extraordinary height appeared on the street, he instantly attracted everyone's attention. However, when they looked at Yuqigong's curly beard, which still had traces of grease on it, coupled with his ferocious appearance, the entire street instantly fell silent. The three of them didn't seem to be surprised. Each of them was holding a large handful of roasted chicken legs, and several bamboo beer cans were hanging from their shoulders with hemp ropes. While eating, they bragged about what had happened beyond the Great Wall. When the three of them walked to the small tavern, they touched their stomachs and their faces were very red. Cheng Yaojin pointed at Zhang Feng's closed door and said, "See, I told you that this kid doesn't get up until noon. Even if he gets up, it's because he has to urinate. You didn't believe me? Let's go. Let's find a jar of fermented glutinous rice to moisten our throats. There was a damn dumpling stall here before." When Yu Qigong heard that there was dumpling, he touched his huge belly and looked around. "Where is it? Lao Tzu hasn't eaten dumplings in Chang'an for a long time." Cheng Yaojin broke a branch to pick his teeth and said, "He went to Xingshan Academy with this kid. I heard that he's learning something about mathematics from the kid from the Du family." Yu Qigong stared. How is that possible? Did all the people in Tonghuifang go there? Along the way, only this Tonghuifang was special. What was different? It was just that on the road, there wasn't even a damn barbecue stall, not to mention people strolling around. Now Yu Qigong finally understood what was going on here. It turned out that they had all gone up the mountain to eat some kind of porridge. The three of them had just drunk a lot of beer and squatted on the road for a while. Instantly, their expressions became unnatural. They looked around, trying to find a place to pee, but there was no place. In the end, under Cheng Yaojin's horrified gaze, this silly guy directly kicked Zhang Feng's door to pieces. And in the midst of this loud noise, the Jinwu guards who had stayed behind to protect Zhang Feng hurriedly jumped out. But when they saw that it was Yu Qigong, they were so scared that their legs trembled. They hurriedly bowed and gestured for him to leave. Then they hurriedly ran away. Zhang Feng, who was sleeping soundly, thought that there was an earthquake when he heard this loud noise. He was stunned and hurriedly ran out. But in front of him, he saw a black wall rushing towards him. "Kid, where's the outhouse?" When Yu Qigong saw a disheveled teenager running out as soon as he entered the door, he only thought that he was a waiter. He picked up Zhang Feng like he was picking up a chick and asked. Zhang Feng was stunned. Pointing at the backyard behind him, Yu Qigong let go, and Zhang Feng instantly fell on his butt. At this time, while Zhang Feng's face was full of question marks, Cheng Yaojin walked in with an awkward expression. Zhang Feng pointed at the person behind him and asked, "Old Chun, who's this silly guy?" Chapter 651. Zhang Feng was completely dumbfounded. He was sleeping in his own house. Not only was the door smashed, but he was also lifted up and asked about the bathroom. "Damn you! Is that all? It's so early in the morning. Can't you solve the problem outside the door? Why are you so anxious? F***CK your second uncle." Cheng Yaojin was known for his thick skin, but at this time he couldn't help but blush. "Well, Fengzi this. Well, you can call him Old Yu. Oh, by the way, let me introduce you. This is Old Qin." How could Zhang Feng care about this now? His mind was full of that silly girl. He couldn't help but feel angry now. He casually greeted the two of them, then hurriedly went into the bedroom, ready to put on the clothes of the great Confucian, and come out to show off. Qin Xiong was also a little dumbfounded. Seeing Zhang Feng enter the bedroom, he pointed at Zhang Feng and asked, "The person you are talking about, is he?" Cheng Yaojin was speechless. He looked at Qin Xiong and said, "What do you think?" This time, Qin Xiong was also speechless. "Let's not talk about this for the time being. Let's talk about Zhang Feng. After being drunk by Old Li yesterday, he didn't know what was going on. Just now he heard a loud noise and walked out of the door in a daze. Then he met such an idiot. Now he didn't feel sleepy at all. When he returned to the bedroom again, he was completely stunned. He saw two beautiful women standing in front of his bed. Although the two of them were wearing servant girls' dresses, they still couldn't hide their graceful figures and their charming faces. Although the Tang dynasty advocated the beauty of plump bodies, it was all because they didn't have enough to eat before. Therefore, in order to show the wealth of the Tang dynasty, Li Shimin said that plump bodies were beautiful, and let the world see the wealth of the Tang dynasty. It was all because of this year's locust plague that they started to take shape. But now, because of Zhang Feng's appearance, Li Shimin seemed to have forgotten about the beauty of plump breasts. After all, who would like a fatty? There was no one. Looking at these two women, although they couldn't compare with Jingshu or Zhang Yuyao, they were still rare beauties. But why would these two women appear in his room? What was going on? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. When the two women saw Zhang Feng looking at them in a daze, They couldn't help but lower their cheeks and perform the palace etiquette. Servant Little Yao and Yao Hong greet Prince Zhang. About that, I want to ask, where am I? What have I done before? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded and completely at a loss. The two women wanted to laugh, but they also understood the importance of this person in the emperor's heart. One of them was called Tao Hong. Her face was very round, and he didn't know whether her cheeks were painted with rouge or were naturally red. Anyone who looked at her would want to pinch her cheeks. At this time Tao Hong said, Prince Zhang was drunk yesterday, so I and Master asked us to stay and serve Prince Zhang. Damn it. Zhang Feng naturally understood what it meant to serve. He hurriedly lifted the quilt subconsciously, and saw that the bedsheet was still gray as before. Only then did he breathe a deep sigh of relief, but he also sighed a little. Didn't they say that if the people of the Tang dynasty were served by maids, it meant, Motherf ****. All these history books and novels are ***king liars. Under the strange eyes of the two women, Zhang Feng sat on the bed and said embarrassedly, Well, do you want to stay? Or go back? Of course, we want to go back. Tao Hong pursed her lips, held back her laughter and said, Of course, if young master wants us to stay and serve you, my master will also agree. There was such a good thing? Brother, Zhang Feng was originally very excited, but when he thought of Chen Tiniu and the other idiots, although he really wanted the two women to stay, he forced himself to pretend to be a gentleman and said reluctantly, I don't need you for the time being. If I need you, I will ask loudly for you too. When Tao Hong and Little Yao heard this, a touch of disappointment flashed in their eyes, but they recovered in a flash. After all, to be able to stand out among so many maids in the palace, they naturally had some ability to serve Li Shimin. The two women bowed again and were ready to leave, but Zhang Feng stopped them. Well, I don't know how to wear this robe. Can you help me put it on? Okay, Prince Zhang. When the two women heard this, they covered their mouths and chuckled, then picked up the neatly folded robe. However, when the two women shook the robe, their faces changed dramatically. They had naturally seen the robe of the great scholar. At this time, seeing it again, and it was in Zhang Feng's place, the two women couldn't help but be deeply shocked. However, the two women didn't say anything. They just let Zhang Feng do a good job, combed Zhang Feng's long hair, and changed his clothes. Zhang Feng just sat there and let the two women serve him. Except for the cloth in his crotch, they changed everything for him. At this time, Zhang Feng also realized that his original cloth in his crotch was gone, and the one he was wearing now was the one he was going to throw away before. Could it be? Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something and pointed to his chest. What happened to my clothes? Replying to Prince Zhang, you were drunk yesterday, and my master asked us to help you take a bath. Although Zhang Feng's skin was extremely thick, he couldn't help but blush when he heard it. Originally, he wanted to experience the feeling of a rich family. He didn't expect that this was really embarrassing. Chapter 652. Zhang Feng acted as if he was fleeing from a disaster. After the two women changed their clothes, he hurriedly walked out of the bedroom. The two women were very polite and didn't say anything. When they came out, they saw Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong, who had just solved a big problem, and couldn't help but be stunned. However, the two women also saw that it was a big matter, so they only bowed and then hurriedly left. At that moment, Yu Qigong was a little confused. He then took a closer look at Zhang Feng. It would have been better if he did not look, but when he did, he was instantly shocked. This kid was actually wearing the clothes of a great scholar? Yu Qigong had naturally seen the two women before. They were Li Shimin's personal palace maids. What did it mean that they had come out of Zhang Feng's bedroom? He saw that Zhang Feng was ignoring him and standing straight at the door, looking outside with his hands behind his back. Yu Qigong asked suspiciously, Old Black, who is this kid? Cheng Yaojin glanced at Yu Qigong and snorted as a reply. This made Yu Qigong feel as if his heart was being scratched by a cat. Although Zhang Feng was looking outside, his ears were perked up as he carefully listened to the conversation between the two. When he heard that Old Black was actually so awesome, he could not help but praise him in his heart. This iron tower of a fool should be taught a lesson like this. Damn it, why would someone kick someone's door in the morning? Why would he lift the owner up as soon as he entered? What was this? This was a slap in the face. How would Lao Tzu survive on this street from now on? Did he not care about his reputation? After the three of them took turns to open the floodgates to let the water out, Yu Qigong saw that Zhang Feng was still ignoring them, and could not help but panic. After all, not to mention the magical military book, the magical porridge was the best way to solve the military's food shortage. He had eaten that thing before, and it was indeed very magical. Not only did it have the fragrance of meat, but his old legs did not flare up while he was eating the porridge. What was this? This was a treasure. Furthermore, he had heard that Zhang Feng had even brought the divine Dr. Sun Simiao to Pyrolite Mountain to perfect the kanji. Yu Qigong couldn't help but have some thoughts. But even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't dare associate that person with the kid in front of him. She didn't look like one at all. However, at this moment, Cheng Yaojin ignored him and Qin Shubao sat there with a respectful expression without saying a word. This made Yu Qigong's hair stand on end. Yu Qigong was a man made of steel and had seen all sorts of situations. Since he would be cut down no matter what he did, Yu Qigong stood up and cupped his fists with a smile. Little brother, I apologize for offending you just now. I really needed to go to the toilet. If the patrolling soldiers found me peeing on the street, they would confiscate my tools. That's why I acted this way after I found out that Big Old Black and your shopkeeper are brothers. If I've offended you in any way, please forgive me. I will take full responsibility for this matter. And to offend you, I have a piece of ancient jade here that I'm willing to give to you. I'll send someone to give you 1,000 strings of cash as an apology. How about that? But I haven't asked who your master is. Whose disciple are you? He couldn't figure out the kid's identity, so he had no choice. When Zhang Feng heard that, he didn't want to fall out with old Chen, so he turned around and cupped his fists. He pointed at the door and said, "It's nothing, but my neck and butt are hurting right now." When Yu Qigong heard that, how could he not know that the kid was taking advantage of the situation to extort him? He had no choice but to grit his teeth and say, "Old man originally suffered from old cold legs. An old friend of mine obtained a batch from Goguryeo." Hey, what are you talking about? Although 100-year-old ginseng is very precious, you don't need a whole cart. But since you're old Chen's friend, I won't stand on ceremony. How much is this door worth? I'll exchange it myself. Come. Have a seat. Yu Qigong wanted to slap himself. Why didn't you say so earlier? Great, now it was a whole cart. No matter how rich his family was, a cart of 100-year-old ginseng would cost at least 10,000 strings of cash. But what could he do now? Moreover, the kid couldn't figure out his identity, and was even wearing the clothes of a great scholar. Yet old He didn't find it strange. He couldn't figure out Zhang Feng's identity, so he could only force a smile and cupped his fists. I haven't asked for your name yet, young man. Zhang Feng waved his hand, and took out 3 jugs of 65 proof white wine from the wine cabinet. He then took out a jug of 15 proof sake, and handed it to the 3 of them. Finally, he placed the 15 proof sake in front of him and cupped his fists. I apologize for my lack of care. I'm Zhang Feng, and I'll be the shopkeeper of this tavern. Yu Qigong was dumbfounded. Qin Shubao was dumbfounded. So this kid was Zhang Feng? Was he also the shopkeeper of this tavern? Or was he a great scholar? Qin Shubao seemed to have thought of something. He stood up and cupped his fists. I've heard a lot about Prince Zhang. Chang'an University is not only well known in Chang'an City, but also in the remote areas of Jiannan Province. It's a blessing of 3 lifetimes to be able to meet me today. Chapter 653. Yu Qigong went crazy. He finally connected all the dots in Qin Shubao's words. He had heard of the Chang'an Academy. After all, his 2 sons had been kidnapped by the crown prince. How could he not know? However, they only knew that it was opened by a young man named Zhang Feng, who was only 20 years old. With just 3 poems, he was jointly recommended by Yu Shinan, Chu Suiliang, and the other 3 great scholars to be a great scholar. But why didn't he associate it with this boy? Now that he had offended Zhang Feng, he suddenly felt that his 2 silly sons were going to be in trouble. Yu Qigong hurriedly cupped his fists and looked Zhang Feng up and down. He clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "So you're the famous Zhang Feng. No discord, no concord. I was reckless today. Don't worry, in 3 days, a cart of Korean ginseng will be sent here. Take it as my apology. I've heard that Xingshan Academy is marvelous, but as you can see, I don't even know how to read a basket of words, but I've got a book called Hanfizi. Please kindly accept it. Zhang Feng's expression changed. Hanfizi. Since it was Hanfizi, and it was a rare book. In the future, Hanfizi could only be summarized from rumors and words of various dynasties. The real Hanfizi had long disappeared in the long river of history. Although he didn't know if this Hanfizi was Hanfizi's original work, it would be a good sign in the academy. What did the ancient academies compete with? They competed with the talents in high school and the number of books they collected. And what did they compete with in the collection of books? It was these rare books, the only books. This was especially true for rare and one-of-a-kind ancient books from before the Qin dynasty. After all, that was an era that people yearned for, and everything now basically evolved from those works. For example, Sun Tzu's Art of War and so on. Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "Thank you for your gift, old you. I'll remember this favor. If you need me in the future, just let me know." Yu Qigong couldn't help but be overjoyed when he heard this. Indeed, it proved the old saying that one could not catch the wolf without risking the child. Although he didn't understand Hanfizi, he wasn't stupid. He had already found someone to copy at least 10 copies. As for giving the only copy to Zhang Feng, on the one hand, it was for his son's sake. On the other hand, it was because of him. That was a book on the art of war. Zhang Feng was about to propose a toast, but when he saw the empty table and Qing Yaojin in the tavern, he slapped his head and said, "I'm sorry for my rudeness. Please take a seat. I'll go and prepare the dishes." As he spoke, Zhang Feng hurriedly took off his robe and went into the kitchen. Wearing this thing was really a hindrance. He really didn't know why the people of this era cared so much about this robe. Within a quarter of an hour, Zhang Feng hurriedly prepared some dishes to go with the wine. He also specially made 2 dishes from the crucian carps and crabs in the water tank in the backyard, and served them to the table. As soon as Zhang Feng came to the table, the 3 people at the table had already poured themselves and drank. Seeing Zhang Feng come, Yu Qigong and Qin Xiong stood up and took the delicacies on the tray. Their gluttons had long been attracted by the fragrance of the kitchen. How could they sit still? They wolfed down the food. Zhang Feng raised the wine jar and said, "Old Qin, since you are friends with old Chen. Fengzi, these 2 guys are Lao Li's right-hand men. If it weren't for the 2 of them in Longyu, Lao Li wouldn't be so peaceful. Although they are his subordinates, it's better to say that they are Lao Li's brothers like us. Just treat them like us. Don't be so cliché. We're all uncouth men. There's no need to be so genteel." Zhang Feng understood when he heard this. He stopped being genteel and raised the wine jar. "I'll drink first. You guys can drink as much as you want." As he spoke, Zhang Feng raised the wine jar and was about to gulp it down. However, before the wine jar touched his mouth, a strong and pungent smell of alcohol rushed at Zhang Feng and made him frown. "Motherf *Ker, who gave me this liquor with a high alcohol content? If he drank this damn jar, wouldn't Lao Tzu go to see the king of hell?" But now he had already acted cool. Moreover, among Qing Yaojin and the other 2, Zhang Feng was so bold. How could they fall behind? Moreover, they had important matters to discuss with Zhang Feng today. The 3 of them also raised the wine jar and gulped it down. There was no other way. Zhang Feng looked around and smelled the alcohol. He couldn't tell who changed the wine, so he braced himself and gulped down a few mouthfuls. After a few mouthfuls, Zhang Feng was terrified. He sat down dizzily and only coughed. On the other hand, these 3 valiant generals continued to gulp it down as if it was plain water. "Good wine. Ha ha ha. Fengzi's wine is really amazing. It's hard to believe that old He is hiding this thing like a treasure. Come Fengzi, let's continue. Since old He calls you Fengzi, old man will call you that too." Yu Qigong drank happily. He had always drunk a lot. Moreover, there was a ban on alcohol in the military. He hadn't touched alcohol for almost a year. Now that he had, and it was such a good wine, how could he not drink to his heart's content? However, Zhang Feng's actions were all bark and no bite. Yu Qigong was displeased. He shook his beard and patted Zhang Feng's shoulder. Fengzi, what's wrong? Are you looking down on me? Zhang Feng looked at the fleas crawling up and down on Yu Qigong's curved beard in horror. He couldn't help but feel his scalp explode. In addition to Yu Qigong's slap, Zhang Feng felt as if his left shoulder had suffered a heavy blow. His body staggered, and he almost fell to the ground. Yu Qigong was also surprised. Fengzi, what's wrong with you? Did you collapse from exhaustion last night? Why is the body of someone who can come up with such amazing military knowledge so weak? Chapter 654. Zhang Feng had already passed out at this time. Since he returned to Chang'an this time, he had been drunk every day. Zhang Feng wondered if he should not have come back. If it went on like this, his stomach would be perforated sooner or later. He coughed violently for a while. Zhang Feng hurriedly refused Yu Qigong's kindness and waved his hand repeatedly. Brother, you're good at drinking. You guys continue. I've suffered on the mountain. I can't eat enough and sleep well every day. No matter how good my body is, it will be worn out. I'm not as good as you guys. Don't try to fool us. Last time my Tainyo came back, he said that you lived a good life on the mountain. Not only did you eat wine and meat every day, but you also cooked some roast chicken every day. You're not a good friend. Zhang Feng stared at Cheng Yaojin and his face darkened. But when he took a closer look, he found that Cheng Yaojin was completely fine after drinking a jar of wine. He was very different from before. He couldn't help but realize that the wine was exchanged by this grandson. And among the people at the table, only Cheng Yaojin knew that he had done this. But he had no evidence, so he could do nothing. Just like that, the dizzy Zhang Feng was forced to drink almost half a liter of wine by the three people. Seeing that Zhang Feng was talking too much, they couldn't help but stop. Instead, they asked Zhang Feng to eat. More than 2 hours later, Zhang Feng finally regained a little clarity. It couldn't be helped. Zhang Feng originally didn't have a high alcohol tolerance, but after drinking with these amazing people all day long, his alcohol tolerance slowly increased. Although it wasn't a huge amount, at least a liter of alcohol was nothing to him. However, today's situation was a bit abnormal. Even a fool could see it, let alone someone like Cheng Yaojin who couldn't hide things. He had something to ask of him. Otherwise, why would this person give him a cart of Korean ginseng at the beginning? That would be a real fool. And not only that, he also gave him Hanfizi. What was Hanfizi? This was a genuine treasure, but this guy actually gave it to him so easily? If he wasn't an idiot, then he was an idiot. However, even though he looked like an idiot, he was able to work under Lao Li and make Lao Li hand over the entire Longyu business to him. What did that mean? Moreover, Zhang Feng always felt that old Qin, who looked gentle and quiet, was not someone to be trifled with. After all, there was a saying, a full pot doesn't make a sound, but half of it is shaking. Zhang Feng deliberately pretended to be drunk. Although this appearance was a little too much, it never failed. Zhang Feng's reputation as a good drinker had long been known. This was a natural signboard. This time, he successfully prevented Zhang Feng from being drunk. After resting on the table for a long time, Zhang Feng pretended to catch his breath and asked, old Qin, you don't know. Fengzi doesn't say anything else, but there's one thing that I want to talk to you about. Go out and ask around. Who in this 10-mile radius doesn't know my name, Zhang Feng? Yes, you're right. Yu Qigong rubbed his hands together and dealt with Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng suppressed the chill in his heart and put his arm around Yu Qigong's shoulder. Old Yu, did you run into some trouble? I'm not that talented, but I'm still good at reading fortunes and guessing. If you have any problems, tell me. Yu Qigong's eyes lit up when he heard this. However, Cheng Yaojin couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng suspiciously. This didn't seem like this kid's style. Could it be that this kid got drunk yesterday, and today he drank until he became muddle-headed? However, Cheng Yaojin didn't think too much about it and said, Fengzi, you don't know. Ever since we established trade with Tubo, business in Longyu Dao has increased. However, I'm sure you know about the recent happenings at the border, right? Zhang Feng pretended to be surprised and nodded. Lao Li mentioned this yesterday. I thought that Lao Li was just talking drunkenly. Could it be true? Of course it's true. Yu Qigong sighed and grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and patted it. It hurt so much that Zhang Feng winced. Only then did Yu Qigong let go of Zhang Feng and said, "This matter started a month ago. A month ago, the border wasn't peaceful. Those who traded cows, sheep, and horses for food couldn't solve Tubo's problem. Later, our Tang dynasty lacked food, so Tubo didn't have a single grain of food, so Zhang Feng was puzzled. That's the government's business. What does it have to do with you?" Yu Qigong glared at him. "Do you think the government can be relied on? Everyone is in danger now." Old man asked around and found out that Qing Yaojin, who's stationed at Longyu, only eats one bowl of porridge every day. That's miserable, not to mention the soldiers. That's why we're wondering if we should get something to help him. Otherwise, if Tubo attacks us one day, then... Yu Qigong had already found out from Qing Yaojin's big mouth that Zhang Feng's military god was him. That's why he revealed this matter. His meaning was self-evident. Your idol is suffering right now. Do you want to give something to help him? As expected, Zhang Feng was also surprised when he heard this. He didn't expect that the army would lack food. Moreover, Qing Yaojin, who was guarding the west gate, only eats one bowl of porridge every day? Then his subordinates must be the same. If that's the case, what if the emperor sent troops to help Tubo quell the rebellion? What would they do? They would be sending themselves to their deaths if they went. Zhang Feng couldn't help but understand the purpose of these two's visit. He couldn't help but feel a little emotional. I understand your intentions now. My great Tang truly lacks examples of patriotic soldiers like you. Since the two of you have spoken, this humble one might not have any other items, but I do have the recipe for a porridge that can resist hunger and strengthen the body. I hope that the two of you can pass it to General Qing Yaojin. Yu Qigong and the other two couldn't help but look at each other. Damn, so this kid is a softie. Chapter 655. Yu Qigong and Qin Xiong, who had discovered Zhang Feng's weakness, looked at each other and gave him a thumbs up. You're so righteous, young friend. I've eaten your porridge in Chang'an city before. My legs don't hurt anymore after eating it. It's amazing. Old man, I didn't expect you to give me such a precious thing. It's a blessing for the Tang dynasty. He knew it very well. Once he obtained the formula for this thing, what kind of terrifying profits would he reap? Take the Chang'an local treasury for example. He had been there for a few days. Although the emperor only sold each bowl of porridge for 1 copper coin, he had made at least 10,000 strings of cash. How amazing was that? Once this thing appeared in the army, not only would it solve the problem of the soldiers' stomachs, it would also make the soldiers stronger and more energetic. Not to mention, if this thing was placed in Longyu Road and opened a kanji shop, it would also increase the army's income by a lot. After all, the soldiers would have starved to death if they relied on their salaries. Every day's training required a huge amount of food. Not only that, but herbs, doctors, equipment maintenance, and so on also required money. Now that this thing was added to the army, the big problem would be solved. Qin Xiong was also excited. He got up and slapped him. Zhang Feng hurriedly got up and helped them up. Brothers, are you looking down on me? No matter how amazing this thing is, it's just a piece of paper to me. If you need it, and it's for the sake of the country and the people, I wouldn't dare to keep it for myself. Then wouldn't the reputation of my White Deer Academy be destroyed if the world were to find out about it? After that, Zhang Feng pretended to be surprised and said, Don't mention this again. If anyone says anything, they're not my brothers anymore. Ha ha ha. Good. That's a real man, a real man. Good. Come, let's drink. Let's drink for this, Jing Fengzi. Yu Qigong took the lead. The three of them each picked a jar of wine from the wine cabinet and gulped it down. Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. They were all drinking low-alcohol wine. F***ck. Now Zhang Feng finally understood. They had all changed their wine to low-alcohol ones? Zhang Feng wanted to cry. He felt like he had been fooled. In his heart, he swore that in the future, he would replace all the packaging of this wine with glass bottles. Then, he would let all of you have your pick. When the three saw that Zhang Feng was not moving his mouth, Yu Qigong glared at Zhang Feng and said, What? Are you looking down on the three of us? Zhang Feng's mouth twitched. You flatter me. I can't hold my liquor. If I drink any more, I'll really fall over. If it were me, I would drink such a generous thing even if I were to be forced to death. Don't say any more. Drink. Even if you drink a bowl, it's fine too. Zhang Feng was speechless. He could only pretend to be drunk, pouring half a bowl, drinking half of it, and pouring the other half down his neck into his collar. Yu Qigong and the other two pretended not to see anything, and continued to drink by themselves. This kid was not honest. He had to drink too much. Otherwise, it would be bad if this kid pulled some dirty tricks. After half a bowl of wine went down his stomach, Zhang Feng only felt that the world was spinning. At that moment, Yu Qigong once again put on a sorrowful expression and said, Brother, to tell you the truth, we came here for another reason. Was he finally going to say his purpose? Zhang Feng pretended not to know anything. He grabbed Yu Qigong's shoulder dizzily but failed. He grabbed Yu Qigong's beard and asked, Brother, tell me. As long as I can do it, everything is negotiable. Yu Qigong grimaced in pain. Finally, he managed to pry Zhang Feng's hand away and said, Actually, we want to train a group of people in our industry. Do you understand what I mean? Thugs. Zhang Feng asked. Yu Qigong coughed and said, Well, something like that. But we don't have any good ideas. After all, the things in the military camp are forbidden to be taught to outsiders. So we were wondering if we could ask you for help. After all, according to Lao Li and the others, you are almost like a god. You can even make something as magical as porridge, so this should be a piece of cake for you. Zhang Feng knew that this guy was up to no good. Now, it turned out that he was thinking about his military studies. Forget it, isn't it just the same as the military training? Lao Tzu would give it to him. For the sake of the car full of ginseng and the movie Hanfizi, she decided to do it. Zhang Feng pretended to be hesitant for a long time and said, In fact, this thing is the treasure of my academy. But since you are my brothers, I can't keep it to myself. But I have my difficulties too. Cheng Yaojin didn't say anything. It didn't mean that he didn't know anything. On the contrary, he knew Zhang Feng very well. This time, there were more twists and turns than anything else. The moment Zhang Feng said this sentence, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. Cheng Yaojin knew that Yu Qigong was going to be in trouble. Chapter 656. Of course, Yu Qigong and Qin Shubao didn't know what Zhang Feng was up to. They only thought that something had happened on the mountain. After all, it was a barren mountain. It had only been a month, so it was natural that there would be problems. Not to mention, this kid was so eager for quick success. Yu Qigong stroked his beard. Zhang Feng couldn't help but shudder when he saw the fleas on his beard. He swore in his heart that after these three left, he would definitely take a good medicinal bath. These fleas, this person was really something. There were so many fleas, but he was still alive and well? He hadn't been squeezed dry? Yu Qigong naturally didn't know what Zhang Feng was thinking. He stroked his beard and said, Fengzi, is there someone on the mountain causing trouble? If that's the case, I only need my 2 sons to go to your academy. If anyone dares to cause trouble, they'll all be thrown off the mountain. How about that? Damn it, what kind of people were they? Beating people up for no reason? Zhang Feng hurriedly waved his hand and said, No one is causing trouble in the academy. But you know, to build an academy, money is needed everywhere. Old Chen and the others know my situation best. If it weren't for Lao Li's little help, the academy might have gone on strike. I understand. You're short of money. Cheng Yaojin's eyelids twitched. He glanced at Yu Qigong and Qin Qiong, then looked at Zhang Feng, who was pretending to be poor. The corner of his mouth twitched. You're short of money. He knew that he didn't pay a single cent for the construction of the academy. Instead, he made a lot of money. The emperor paid for the land, which was equivalent to giving it away for free. Previously, the emperor paid for the land, but in the end he returned a lot of money. Didn't this money end up in his pocket? Moreover, the crown prince was basically supporting the construction of the academy. You paid for it. But Qin Yaojin didn't dare to say that. He also wanted to see how Yu Qigong and Qin Qiong would feel after knowing that they had been defeated. As expected, Qin Qiong cupped his fists and said with an expression of being stunned by Zhang Feng's words, Little friend Zhang Feng is truly noble and a role model for my generation. It really makes me feel ashamed. If you lack food, then I really can't take it out. But if you're talking about silver, as long as you need it, it just so happens that the copper coins in my storehouse are about to go moldy. I'll find someone to send it to you on another day, immediately. Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. Is the money in the treasury moldy? How much would that cost? He hurriedly cupped his hands and sighed with emotion. Elder brother Qin is still the best. Then I'll thank you here. Wait. How could Yu Qigong sit still? However, before he spoke, he looked at Cheng Yaojin. That meant, how would Cheng Yaojin know that he would be caught in the crossfire if he just sat there and didn't speak? He could only say, Lao Tzu isn't like the rest of you. I estimate that 500 dan of food and fodder have already been transported to Xiao Mountain. When Zhang Feng heard this, he grabbed Cheng Yaojin's hand excitedly. Elder brother Chen, you're really the savior of my college. I represent White Deer College to thank you for the food. When my college is completed, there will definitely be a place for you on the Merit Monument. When Cheng Yaojin heard this, he stroked his beard and laughed loudly as he stared at Yu Qigong. You're still the best. Good, good, good. When the food from the south arrives, I'll think of a way to get some for you. Yu Qigong was infuriated. He clenched his teeth and slammed the table. I don't have any food, but I heard that Fengzi is looking for skilled craftsmen. I happen to have such talents under me. If you need them, I'll get them for you tomorrow. Is 5,000 enough? Zhang Feng was stunned. 5,000 people? Do you think I'm a charity hall here? Raise 5,000 people for you? Although he didn't know what these people under old Yu did, these 5,000 mouths needed to eat. After calculating, Zhang Feng still gritted his teeth and said, although, seeing Zhang Feng's ugly expression, Yu Qigong gritted his teeth again and said, along with them up the mountain were old man's 10,000 coins and some silk brocade. When he heard this, Zhang Feng immediately squeezed out a smile. Oh my, elder brother, you're still the most practical. All right. Just based on your words, even if you want me to sacrifice my life, I won't hesitate. Yu Qigong felt the pinch. Moreover, the 5,000 people under him were all skilled in construction. When there was a war, it was fine because they were all treasures. Whether it was blacksmiths or carpenters, they were all experts. There were even top craftsmen. However, when there was no war, they had to spend a lot of money and food to raise them. Normally, it wasn't much. Every mouthful of food was a matter of money. However, there was no other way now. Yu Qigong was already eating porridge every day. Where would he have the money to raise people? However, after being provoked by Cheng Yaojin, he instantly thought of this idea. It just so happened that Zhang Feng was short on manpower, and he couldn't afford to raise them. Didn't they happily reach an agreement? After they drank another bowl of wine, Zhang Feng asked, oh right, may I know why you brothers are here this time? Chapter 657. Zhang Feng had really forgotten. Yu Qigong was a little speechless. He nudged Qin Qiong with his elbow, and Qin Qiong said, brother, you know that we're in Longyu, and the border isn't peaceful right now, so we want to train a group of guards to guard against thieves. They're the thugs you mentioned. Zhang Feng suddenly understood. If that's the case with such a big business, the local area. Fengzi, you really don't remember? Yu Qigong suspected that this kid was pretending to be drunk. He had clearly said it just now, and now he was asking again. Wasn't it obvious that he wanted to scam them again? He was afraid. Now, other than the mansion in Chang'an and those businesses, he had given everything he could to this kid. He was afraid. If it happened again, he could only use the mansion to repay the debt. Cheng Yaojin also felt that it was a little too much. He hurriedly explained what he had just said. Zhang Feng still gave him face. Only then did he come to a realization. He pretended to be angry and said, you should have said so earlier. Why didn't you say so earlier? Why didn't you say something so important earlier? That place not only has your businesses, but I also have shares in all of your businesses. If those thieves rob it, won't that cut off my path to wealth? Yu Qigong and the other two were completely speechless. They only had one thought at this time. They wanted to beat someone up. This grandson was 2F** king annoying. So after talking for so long, they were now the ones to be blamed? Zhang Feng didn't want to be long-winded anymore. Now that his head was dizzy, he just wanted to quickly deal with this matter and go to sleep. Otherwise, when he was dizzy, he would be tricked by these three. That would be terrible. Well, as I've said before, this is the treasure of my academy. It's also a secret that I won't pass on. However, since you've all been so generous, it would be inhumane of me to hide it from you. However, I have a test question here. If you can answer it correctly, then this military book will be presented to you with both hands. No, and that training method of yours. I want that too. Qin Qiong hurriedly added. Zhang Feng patted his head and said, then I'll have to trouble Brother Qin to help me get the brush and ink. I'm drunk. This training method is actually very simple. You just need to build a training ground according to what I've drawn. Horizontal bars, parallel bars, this swamp altar, sandbags, and this. How was Zhang Feng drunk at this moment? While writing and drawing on the paper, he explained to them such as the fishnet-like net wall, the wooden horse, the minefield that required them to crawl, and so on. The more they looked and listened, the more their eyes burned with passion. What is this? In the past, their barracks, regardless of whether it was good or bad, were all thrown into the training ground and trained to kill. But who would have noticed that soldiers could train like this? Let's not talk about the soldiers first. Let's talk about the weightlifting squats first. While Zhang Feng was talking, Cheng Yaojin quietly ran to the backyard and found a sack of food. He held it high above his head, but after only 10 rounds, he felt like he was running from the palace to Chang'an city and then running back. It was as strenuous as running from the palace to the outskirts of Chang'an city and then running back. His legs were as sore as if he had climbed a mountain for a whole day. Cheng Yaojin couldn't help but be shocked. He pulled the three of them to the backyard and pointed at the sack. Fengzi, let's not talk about other things first. Lao Tzu's physical strength is not bad. He can lift 180 kilograms without panting or blushing. But why can't I do 3 of the squats you talked about with this sack of food? Zhang Feng heard this and glared. Do you still need to ask? Tell me, how old are you? You haven't even flexed your muscles yet, and you're suddenly undergoing such high-intensity training. You should thank the heavens that you didn't tear your ligaments. Faced with Zhang Feng's attack, Cheng Yaojin didn't care. In any case, this brat dared to insult others. He even dared to insult the emperor, so he didn't care. But this thing was very important, so he didn't dare to be careless. After all, this thing was really damn useful. In the long run, if he squatted 5 times a day, he would only need to do 5 times. In a month, his broad axe would be able to add another 50 kilograms. Moreover, it would be as easy as playing with a small wooden stick. If he let his subordinates do such a miraculous thing, then everyone would be able to watch a broad axe charge forward. That would be damn exciting. Zhang Feng slowly pointed to a green brick at the corner of the wall and said, at the very beginning, you guys can rely on your good physical strength, so you can definitely do it. However, those servants of yours who drink porridge all day definitely can't do it like you guys. This will only cause them to die without a doubt. Don't you guys understand the principle of more haste, less speed? Yu Qigong and the other 2 shook their heads, causing Zhang Feng's face to darken. Hey, this needs to be done step by step. For example, at the beginning, you guys can tie this brick to your ankles, and then jump on the spot like this. As he spoke, Zhang Feng jumped on the spot to demonstrate for the 3 people to see. However, he didn't tie the brick to his ankles. Then he continued. After 10 days, you can add half a brick to each leg and jump on the spot. You only need to do it 3 times a day, each time for half a quarter of an hour. After that, you can also run with weights. After that, when you can carry 30 kilograms of weight and tie 5 kilograms of bricks to your ankles and still be able to move freely, then congratulations, your hired thugs have finished their apprenticeship. Chapter 658. At this time, you will need this toy. Old Chun, do you believe that if you do as I say a month later, even if you squat for 2 hours with this toy in your hand, your face won't turn red and you won't be out of breath? At that time, Even if there are only 100 of you, you will be able to defeat 10,000 Tufan soldiers. The three of them were shocked when they heard this. If not for the fact that Cheng Yaojin had held up the bag of grain just now, the three of them would definitely have thought that this kid was bragging. However, after hearing Zhang Feng's detailed explanation, the three of them could not help but gasp. As long as they were not fools, they would be able to figure it out. However, Yu Qigong could not figure it out. Fengzi, what does this have to do with the battlefield? Don't we need to charge and kill on the battlefield? Why do you only pay attention to this? Don't you need the conventional charging and killing formation? Zhang Feng looked at Yu Qigong as if he was looking at a fool and said, "Who said that? Do you think that what I drew on the notebook for you was just for fun? Let me tell you, this is actually the elementary military science, also known as military training. If a person can completely master this thing, then he will be qualified to train in individual combat and formation. If that's the case," Zhang Feng thought for a while and said, "You only need to go to the military camp and hire a trainer. Now you can hire a trainer with just 1 stone of grain. Don't they know those things? At this time, you can ask them to teach you. After 3 years, when Chen Tinyu and the others come out, I will ask them to train you. In less than a month, all of your fighters will be able to become commandants." The three of them were completely envious when they heard this. It turned out that there was still the most important part that he had not taught them. No way. They had to get their sons to come to the academy. Otherwise, in 3 years, that big fool Qing Yaojin would be so arrogant. Yu Qigong could not help but ask, "Fengzi, there is one more thing that we are here for this time. Look, I am an uncouth man, but the 2 boys at home are too handsome. They are always causing trouble in Chang'an City. That's why I was wondering if I should send them to you. Come on. I'd like to see how handsome you're talking about." Zhang Feng patted his chest and said, "We are all brothers. Since we are brothers, let's not talk about these things. As long as they come, I guarantee that in 3 years, I will teach them all my skills." "That's a promise. Old Qin, I also have a..." Come. Zhang Feng directly interrupted Qin Xiong and patted his chest. After that, Zhang Feng personally demonstrated the benefits of combining military training with physical training and organized everything into a written document. Only then did the three of them hold it in their arms like it was a treasure. However, in the end, none of them felt at ease. Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin glared at Qin Xiong. How could Qin Xiong not know? He borrowed the pen and ink in Zhang Feng's hand and hurriedly copied 2 copies. Only then did Yu Qigong and the other 2 give up. Zhang Feng also took the opportunity to quickly make a bowl of vinegar soup and drank it. With a shiver, he also sobered up a lot. At this time, when he saw the 3 of them holding the sack up and down, Zhang Feng was speechless. However, it was not good to say anything. Anyway, if they wanted to play with this thing, then let them play with it. The preparation itself was a set of fitness equipment in the future. However, in this era there was no other way to use it. They could only use the simplest. If it was possible, Zhang Feng would definitely copy the original set of military training in the future. However, it was not now. Even if he wanted to do it, he would do it in the academy. After the 3 of them played with it for a while, seeing that Zhang Feng seemed to have sobered up, Qin Xiong breathed heavily and stretched his body. "Fengzi, this thing is really so magical. Usually, even if you walk for a whole day or ride for a whole day, your face won't be red and you won't be out of breath. However, this sack is at least 100 pounds. Why is it that after a few plays, my whole body feels uncomfortable, as if it has been hammered? You guys are too weak." The few of them were speechless. However, according to Zhang Feng's standards, they were really too weak. However, at this time, they were even more passionate about the military training that Zhang Feng was talking about. Cheng Yaojin could not sit still anymore. He wanted to slap Zhang Feng, but was nimbly dodged by the annoying guy. He touched his nose and said, "Fengzi, just tell us, what is this military training thing? Today, after hearing what you said, I feel uncomfortable, as if a cat is scratching my heart." "Okay, if you guys want to know, I will ask you the simplest thing. If you guys tell me, not only will I teach you all about military training, But I will also teach you the second half of the training manual that is considered confidential. How about it? The three of them heard this and hurried over. Is what you said true? Zhang Feng patted his chest and looked at the three of them with disdain. How can it be false? Okay, then ask. Now, each of you has 3,000 people, and I have 5,000 pounds of grain. How can you distribute the 50,000 pounds of grain equally? Chapter 659. This time, the three of them were stunned. That was something that belonged to the quartermaster. How would they know? However, when they thought of Zhang Feng's amazing military knowledge, they could not help but scratch their heads and think hard. After a while, Qin Qiong asked tentatively, Fengzi, you said that we each have 3,000 people, and you have 5,000 dan of grain. If it were me, I would combine these 9,000 people into one, and then according to the number of people, give everyone 1 jin of grain and slowly distribute it. Is that okay? Zhang Feng pursed his lips. That's too slow. Moreover, I'm talking about 3 groups. For example, Wei, Shu, and Wu of the 3 kingdoms. Do you think you can integrate the 3 of them? When Qin Qiong heard this, he could not help but frown. After thinking for a while, he shook his head. Look, Fengzi, I've thought of something. 5,000 dan of grain is enough. If I were the quartermaster, I would give the grain to each force 1,000 dan. Zhang Feng nodded and motioned for Yu Qigong to continue. However, Yu Qigong was stuck again. He could not divide the remaining 2,000 dan. No matter how he divided it, there would be one less person's share. There was no way to divide it. Cheng Yaojin slapped Yu Qigong on the head and said excitedly, I understand. Fengzi, if it's the 3 kingdoms, the Wei army will definitely be the strongest. 3,000 dan, and the remaining 2,000 dan will be divided equally between Shu and Wu? Wrong. They were all wrong. Zhang Feng looked at the 3 of them with a sinister smile. In the end, he smiled helplessly and said, Think about it carefully. When the time comes, come to me when you've thought it through. However, I'm warning you, if I find out that you've found someone else to do this, I won't give you the military book. Zhang Feng's words extinguished the excitement in their eyes. The 3 of them had originally planned to solve this problem as soon as they left this place. This damned little bastard was truly a thief. He had directly blocked off their escape route. The 3 of them could only dejectedly leave. As they walked, they pondered about this matter. From time to time, they would quarrel on the street and even fight. Zhang Feng did not care about all of this, because at this moment, an important person had arrived. Jingshu. Jingshu had actually arrived a long time ago. However, she didn't enter the room. Instead, she stood quietly by the door and waited. However, the fragrance that wafted out of her body from time to time had long since alerted the 4 of them. Only then did Yu Qigong and the other 2 hurriedly leave. How could these people not know that a long separation is better than a new love? Zhang Feng looked at Jingshu, who quietly took off her guzheng and put it on the table. Then she sat opposite him and took off her veil. He said, Miss Jingshu, long time no see. You've lost weight. Drink less. Zhang Feng choked instantly. He could only laugh foolishly and say, You saw it too. There's nothing I can do. These guys wanted to get me drunk the moment they came. I can't beat them. Jingshu chuckled and said, How was it on the mountain? I heard from the people at Chang'an University that you went to look for a carpenter? Zhang Feng nodded. When Jingshu got the confirmation, her originally cold face couldn't help but become more melancholy at this time. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly explained, Well, I didn't mean anything else. I looked for a carpenter for something else. Isn't this pork too musty? I just wanted to solve this problem for him. After all, the Tang dynasty is short of food now. Prince Zhang, you don't need to explain. Jingshu said lightly, This little girl knows that Prince Zhang is very busy. But when I learned that you have returned to Chang'an, and I wanted to come and see you. Since we've met, this little girl will take her leave. Zhang Feng was stunned. He could feel that Jingshu had a lot to say and the worry in her eyes. However, he also understood that now was not the time to talk about this. After all, he had neither fame nor career. As a good young man in the 21st century, how could he dare to marry a beauty before he made a career? The most important thing was, This damn polygamy in the Tang dynasty made him somewhat unable to care about it. Although at the beginning, Zhang Feng had wanted to have a woman on both sides. Which man didn't want to? But when he really saw Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao, he panicked. His usual wisdom seemed to be stuck. What's more, now he knew that the two women were like sisters, which made Zhang Feng even more difficult to deal with. Looking at Jingshu's back, he could only sigh. Alas, I can only take one step at a time. At this time, hearing this sigh, old He's daughter Xiao Xiao, who was standing at the door, made a face at Zhang Feng, then raised her small fist and followed Jingshu away. Did it need to be said? Zhang Feng was not a fool. Zhang Feng was a little scared. But in the end he quickly wrote 2 poems and put them in 2 envelopes. Then he hurried to catch up with Jingshu and said, "I've been too busy these days. On the mountain. I know what happened on the mountain." Zhang Feng interrupted Jingshu and solemnly handed the 2 letters in his hand to Jingshu and said, "Miss Jingshu, please pass on Yuyao's letter on my behalf. Every night when I dream at midnight, I will look at the lights in Chang'an city and hear the sound of insects in my ears. It's like the sound of your zither." Jingshu's face turned red because of Zhang Feng's sudden words of love, especially on the street. Fortunately, her veil was covered at this time, but Jingshu still hurried away. Only then did Xiao Xiao give Zhang Feng a thumbs up and skipped away. Chapter 660. Ever since she entered Chang'an University, Jingshu was particularly focused on the rumors about Zhang Feng. Jingshu wouldn't let go of even the slightest rumor about Zhang Feng. In the beginning, Jingshu believed that Zhang Feng had really fulfilled her promise and deciphered the Huga 18 beats. She didn't have much contact with Zhang Feng, but she knew most of the people around Zhang Feng. Therefore, this aroused Jingshu's curiosity. Moreover, Zhang Feng was handsome and didn't have a wife. Where could she find such a Mr. Right? In addition, Zhang Feng's talent was enough to leave those debauches in the dust. Zhang Feng was the Mr. Right that Jingshu had never dreamed of. After all, being born in Yanlai Lu was a blemish. However, although Zhang Feng was a little evasive, he didn't refuse. This obviously meant that he acquiesced. In addition, the outside world had already spread the news about the relationship between the two. On one hand, it was because she wanted to marry Zhang Feng. On the other hand, it was because of Zhang Feng's talent. During this period, since Zhang Feng went up Xiao Mountain, the legend of Zhang Feng resounded throughout Chang'an City. It was even said that the miracle-working Dr. Sun Simiao was attracted by Zhang Feng to go up Xiao Mountain, and hadn't come down until now. A few days ago, there was a rumor that the contemporary great scholar Yu Shinan, after going up Xiao Mountain, directly declared that he would close himself and go up Xiao Mountain. This made Jingshu even more attracted to Zhang Feng, as if she had lost her soul. Every day, she would fall into longing for him. If she hadn't met Zhang Yuyao when the imperial edict was read last time, she probably wouldn't have been able to bear the pain of longing, and went up Xiao Mountain. However, it was also because she met Zhang Yuyao, 2 people with poor lives, that she had a trace of comfort. Zhang Yuyao didn't dislike Jingshu's birth, and even learned ancient music from Jingshu. The 2 even became sisters. For Jingshu, such a wonderful thing was a blessing from the heavens. Although she was a singer of Yanlai Lu and a frequent guest of the imperial family, she also had another identity. She was the disciple of Empress Zhangsun. Empress Zhangsun had once wanted her to marry the crown prince. Fortunately, Zhang Feng had appeared at this time. Jingshu was very resistant to becoming the crown prince's concubine. Before she entered Yanlai Lu, she was the daughter of a minister of the previous dynasty, and naturally knew the depths of the imperial palace. For her, the imperial palace was just a nightmare. Fortunately, in the end, the emperor stepped in and tacitly agreed to her relationship with Zhang Feng. He even had the intention to matchmake them. What was this? This was a true blessing from the heavens. "Little wife, we're here." While Jingshu was lost in her thoughts, a small voice sounded beside her. At this time, Jingshu raised her head and discovered that they had already arrived at Zhang Manor. At this time, the sedan bearer had already come to report. The servants at the door were already used to Jingshu's arrival and hurriedly opened the door. Jingshu leisurely entered Zhang Manor under an oil paper umbrella. As soon as she entered, Zhang Shan had already received the news and personally waited at the door with Yu Yao. This morning, old man heard the noise of a magpie at the door. So it was Jingshu who came to visit. Jingshu bowed to Zhang Shan and Madame Zhang, then said, Uncle Zhang is joking. This little girl doesn't dare to take responsibility. However, this little girl has indeed brought a piece of good news today. Is it that brat Zhang Feng's? As they spoke, they entered the drawing room. Jingshu also secretly handed a letter to Zhang Yuyao. When Zhang Yuyao saw the handwriting on the letter, her face instantly flushed red. She could recognize Zhang Feng's handwriting. After all, only Zhang Feng could write such ugly handwriting. The moment they entered the drawing room, Zhang Shan noticed that something was wrong with Zhang Yuyao, but he didn't say anything. He only asked a simple question about Zhang Feng inviting a craftsman up the mountain before leaving with a hearty laugh. Only the two women were left behind. It was only then that Zhang Yuyao pulled Jingshu into the boudoir. Little sister Jingshu, quickly tell me how Prince Zhang is doing. He's lost weight and has experienced the vicissitudes of life. However, this is all from drinking wine. Jingshu was still concise and comprehensive. As she spoke, she also took out the letter that Zhang Feng wrote to her and placed it on Zhang Yuyao's dressing table. At this time, the two women carefully opened the envelope and opened the yellow straw paper. There was nothing else on the paper, only a short poem. Zhang Yuyao softly read the poem that Zhang Feng wrote to her. When the lotus leaves are born, they are born with regret. When the lotus leaves wither, they are born with regret. When the lotus leaves wither, they are born with regret. When the lotus leaves wither, they are born with regret. When Zhang Yuyao finished reading, she was already looking at Jingshu with tears in her eyes. Jingshu also recited slowly. Meeting is difficult. Parting is also difficult. The east wind is weak, 100 flowers wither. The spring silkworm silkens only when it dies. The candle torch turns to ashes. Tears begin to dry. The morning mirror but the clouds change. The night song should feel the cold moonlight. There is no road to Mount Peng this time. The green bird is eager to explore. The two women were both talented women. Naturally, they could also see Zhang Feng's feelings from Zhang Feng's poem. However, they were also deeply shocked by the yearning in Zhang Feng's poem. After a long time, Zhang Yuyao pulled Jingshu's hand and said, Little sister Jingshu, although you usually don't talk much, I can see your feelings. Prince Zhang didn't refuse nor did he agree. I heard that he said before that he would first start a career, and then start a family. Jingshu looked at the scenery outside the window and smiled faintly. It's enough to know his feelings. As long as he is well. Even if I have to wait for a lifetime, it's enough. With such a husband, what more can I ask for? Zhang Yuyao also turned her tears into a smile. Yes, we will wait. Isn't it just 3 years? We will wait for him. Chapter 661. The news of Yu Qigong and the others coming to Zhang Feng's place had already reached Li Shimon's ears when the two girls returned to the palace. Li Shimon didn't find it strange that the two of them were going to Zhang Feng's place. Thinking about it, he understood that if the three of them didn't even know who went up Shao Mountain, then his career as a great general was over. The three of them also knew that they couldn't hide the fact that they came to Zhang Feng's tavern. Moreover, this matter was too big for them to hide. Moreover, they really didn't know how to deal with Zhang Feng's rotten idea. They could only helplessly ask the emperor. After all, even if they knew the answer, they had to pretend that they didn't. Because if the emperor said it was right, then it was right. Otherwise, it would be the end of their lives. As soon as the three of them entered Taiji Palace, they knew that the emperor had been waiting for them. As soon as they entered the imperial study, the three of them bowed in unison. Old General Cheng Yaojin Yu Qigong and Qin Qiong greet the emperor. Li Shimin put down the brush in his hand and picked up a piece of calligraphy to admire. Then he compared it with Zhang Feng's crooked poem on the wall. The smile on his face instantly disappeared by more than half. He put down the piece of calligraphy gloomily and asked, I heard that you went to Zhang Feng's place today? Reporting to the emperor, we did go to Zhang Feng's place. Li Shimin smiled. After indicating for the three of them to sit down, he asked, Tell me, what is this brat bragging about again? Yu Qigong and the others heard this, but Cheng Yaojin didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Yu Qigong. Yu Qigong then looked at Qin Xiong, this grandson, who was playing with his fingers and shaking his head. He could only say in a muffled voice, "The day before yesterday, I heard from Elder Fong that he went to Shao Mountain with old Mr. Yu Shinan. Isn't this old general always heard of Brother Zhangfeng's reputation, but didn't see him? That's why I wanted to visit him. To be able to meet him today, this Prince Zhang is truly a rare talent." Li Shimin smiled when he heard that. What did he say? Replying to Your Majesty, "This is the military training book that little brother Zhangfeng gave to us. Please take a look, Your Majesty." Qin Xiong did not dare to hide it. He hurriedly handed the original copy that Zhangfeng wrote to Li Shimin. Little Gizi hurriedly took it and handed it to Li Shimin. Li Shimin flipped through the book, and his gaze finally settled on the picture. He waved his hand, and little Gizi hurriedly took out an exquisite red sandalwood box from the bookshelf. He took out an identical piece of paper and unfolded it in front of Li Shimin. Li Shimin compared the two pictures, then laughed and said, "This kid really is. Come, take a look. What's the difference between these two blueprints?" Hearing this, the three of them couldn't help but be surprised. Did the emperor also go to the tavern? And he even obtained this? The three of them hurriedly stepped forward. They almost gouged out their eyeballs and threw them on the blueprints to compare. They could not help but sigh inwardly when they took a look. Oh my God, this grandson of mine is really dishonest. He had given all the blueprints to the emperor, so why were they not as comprehensive as the emperor's blueprints in their hands? He had even listed out the training method and the detailed method of manufacturing the blueprints. However, when they looked at their blueprints, they instantly felt that they had been fooled by this kid again. Although their blueprints were different from Li Shimin's, they lacked annotations, notes on manufacturing, size, and so on. That made Yu Qigong want to bang his head against the wall. Damn it! Lao Tzu spent so much effort, and this kid only showed me this? However, he also knew how precious the blueprints were, and what Zhangfeng did. If he gave them something even better than the emperor's, wouldn't the emperor lose face? Moreover, if the blueprints were to be spread out in too much detail, it would only make the person who obtained the blueprints an even more dangerous enemy. Obviously, Zhangfeng had also thought of this. After all, in Zhangfeng's eyes, how could someone who worked for Lao Li be unscathed? What if Lao Li went to look for him? When they thought about it, they really understood. Li Shimin could not help but admire Zhangfeng. If someone else were to do this, they would not be able to do it better than Zhangfeng. What do you think? What do you think of this thing? When the three of them heard this, they hurriedly took a step back and said, Your Majesty, this subject and the others have tried squatting at Zhangfeng's little tavern. This thing is really amazing. At the beginning, I only felt like all the energy in my body had been sucked out. I only squatted 10 times with a 100-pound sack, and I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on my head. However, after returning to the palace, this old subject felt as light as a swallow. This is really strange. This old subject feels the same. Me too. Li Shimin could not help but be surprised. With a wave of his hand, Xiao Gizi hurried out. A moment later, a golden-armored Jinwu guard hurriedly appeared in the imperial study. As soon as he appeared, the imperial study was instantly filled with the unpleasant smell of sweat. Even the Jinwu guard's fists were dripping with sweat. Li Shimin asked, You've practiced for half a day. How do you feel about this thing? Your Majesty, this is a divine skill from heaven. This general has practiced for half a day, but it is as tiring as if I have trained for 10 days. However, my body feels as comfortable as if it has been reborn. Chapter 662. Hearing this, Li Shimin and the other three were all shocked. Li Shimin waved his hand to dismiss the soldiers. Then he personally went to the back of the imperial study. From a secret compartment, he took out the military book that Zhangfeng gave him, and then walked out. He asked, Did Zhangfeng give you the military book? Hearing this, the three of them smiled bitterly. Your Majesty, this bad guy is very bad. He didn't give us anything. Instead, he gave us a difficult question. He said that as long as we can answer it, and we are not allowed to ask outsiders, he will give us everything he knows. Li Shimin was amused. This guy didn't want to give them anything. This lazy guy must know that they can't answer it with their IQ and will come to ask me. That's why he came up with this delaying tactic. Awesome. It was really ingenious. Li Shimin waved his hand and sat down opposite the three. He asked, "Tell me. I'm also very curious." Yu Qigong said, "Your Majesty, the question is like this. There are 3 armies, each with 3,000 people. These 3 armies are like the Wei, Shu, and Wu kingdoms of the 3 kingdoms period. At this time, everyone is in urgent need of food. However, there are only 5,000 dan of food. How can they divide the food equally?" Li Shimin was confused. What kind of question is this? The 3 armies added up to 9,000 people. If these 9,000 people were divided according to the 3 kingdoms, they couldn't be put together. Then it would be difficult to divide them. Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, "How did you answer?" The 3 of them gave their respective answers. Li Shimin couldn't help but laugh. This guy is really sneaky. The 3 were stunned by Li Shimin's sudden laughter and asked, "Your Majesty, you..." Li Shimin shook his head and said, "I'm telling you that this question is wrong. You've been generals all your lives. Don't you know this? You've been fooled by this guy. Tell me honestly, did you offend Fengzi? You know what this kid is capable of. Don't you know that you've been betrayed by Zhang Feng?" As he spoke, Li Shimin's expression instantly turned cold. Only then did the 3 of them break out in cold sweat. This was Zhang Feng, so it was fine. But if it was someone else, like the Tubo or the Turks who were negotiating with them, what would they do? Cheng Yaojin and Qin Xiong couldn't help but stare at Yu Qigong. There was even a hint of danger in their eyes. Li Shimin glanced at Yu Qigong and asked, "Minister Qin, why don't you tell us what Yu Qi has done this time?" Replying, "Your Majesty, Yu Qi." Qin Xiong hurriedly kicked Yu Qigong out of Zhang Feng's door. Then he told Li Shimin about how Zhang Feng had been lifted up. Li Shimin laughed so hard that he clutched his stomach and tears came out. Yu Qigong's originally dark face had now turned purple. He glared at Qin Xiong in anger and shame, as if he wanted to fight when he got out of here. After laughing for a long time, Li Shimin finally stopped laughing and said, "No wonder Zhang Feng played you. If it was someone else, I can tell you clearly that you won't be able to come back today. Don't look at how skinny this kid is. He has 100 ways to make you unable to come back." Only then did Li Shimin say, "Yu Qi, when can you change your temperament a little bit? How much have you been tricked by Fengzi today?" Yu Qi didn't dare to lie. He told the whole story. Yu Qigong's back couldn't help but be drenched in sweat. He definitely couldn't become an enemy of this grandson in the future. He was simply impossible to guard against. When Li Shimin heard this, he sighed and said, "How about this? Go back to the Ministry of Revenue. I will pay for these things. However, the military knowledge you want is with me." As he spoke, Li Shimin patted the booklet in his hand. When they saw the crooked words, they thought to themselves, as expected. Li Shimin said again, "What Zhang Feng gave you is your good luck. However, don't do this in the future. This is the last time I will talk about this. If Zhang Feng is willing, he will naturally say it. Old He knows Zhang Feng's temper the best. If he doesn't want to say it, even I can't do anything about it. Moreover, you have all seen how terrifying he is at White Deer College. Therefore, you should understand what to do, right?" Li Shimin once again regained the prestige of an emperor. The 3 hurriedly stood up and said in unison, "We will remember." "All right, let's leave it at that. I will ponder over this military knowledge later, and give you a copy. Don't think about Zhang Feng anymore. Otherwise, even if you sell your house, it won't be enough for Zhang Feng to scam you. You should know that I spent a lot of money to build a holiday home for the retired emperor, but it has already flown into Zhang Feng's pocket, not to mention the 3 of you. With your intelligence, you should just obediently do what you need to do." When Yu Qigong heard this, he couldn't help but buzz. A sudden clap of thunder sounded in his head. The holiday home that the emperor had gifted to the retired emperor, and that the retired emperor hadn't stayed in for even a day, had become Zhang Feng's? Chapter 663. The three of them bid farewell to the emperor, then strolled around the imperial palace while heading to the Ministry of Works. There was no other way. Yu Qigong wanted to recover his losses, otherwise he would definitely beat his wife to death when he returned this time. At this time, Yu Qigong glared at Cheng Yaojin with a face full of anger. Old Black, you're not honest. You clearly knew about this matter. Why didn't you say so earlier? You just sat there and watched Lao Tzu make a fool of himself? Cheng Yaojin heard this and spread out his hands. You're blaming me wrongly. I already told you not to be anxious and to come to my residence first, but you didn't listen. Feng Zi's matter is very special. And you also know how can this matter be said on the street? You didn't let me say it. Why are you blaming me now? Do you still want some face? Yu Qigong heard this. He was also angry. Can't you King say it directly? That's your duke's residence. Can't you King say it in one breath? Must you watch Lao Tzu make a fool of himself? Fine. I can't be bothered with you. I have to go back and study this military training manual. If you have the ability, go find Feng Zi. Find Feng Zi and get back at him. While speaking, Cheng Yaojin clasped his hands and was about to leave. At this moment, a faint voice came from behind them, causing their expressions to change drastically. What are you three brats doing here? Hearing this, the three of them hurriedly turned around, not daring to raise their heads, and hurriedly bowed. This old official greets the retired emperor. While speaking, Li Yuan, who was sitting on a sliding pole, slowly appeared in the sight of the three. Once the locusts were gone. First of all, the flowers and trees in the imperial palace seemed to have been reborn, blooming with vitality. Although it was not the beginning of autumn, all the flowers and plants had basically recovered their original lush and verdant. There was no trace of the miserable appearance during the locust plague, and the few of them looked behind Li Yuan, only to see a few disheveled women sitting in the pavilion in the middle of the lake not far away, playing poker. The three of them hurriedly lowered their heads, and did not look sideways. Li Yuan waved his hand, letting the several palace maids put down their rods. Looking at the three people, he asked, I can hear your loud voices from far away, disturbing Zhen to the point that I don't even have the mood to play cards. What's wrong with you? Did the emperor reprimand you? However, I heard from your conversation that you seem to have suffered a setback. Furthermore, I vaguely heard Feng Zi's name. How could he have been bullied by that brat Zhang Feng? Hearing this, the three of them lowered their bodies even more. When Cheng Yaojin heard this, he stomped hard on Qin Qiong. Qin Qiong felt the pain and said, Your Majesty, we just came back from the pub. The moment Li Yuan heard about the small tavern, his dark eyes instantly lit up. He hurriedly indicated to the three of them, Let's go. Let's go to the pavilion in the middle of the lake, and chat slowly. What could the three people say? They could only follow Li Yuan to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. They saw that on the pavilion in the middle of the lake, they did not know where Li Yuan got his hands on an extremely luxurious decorated flower boat. On the boat, there were continuous sounds. With a wave of Li Yuan's hand, no matter if it was the woman in the pavilion in the middle of the lake or that flower boat, they all instantly disappeared from their sight. Even Li Yuan's palace mates who accompanied him were chased away by him. At this moment, Li Yuan asked, Tell me, what has that brat been doing recently? Some time ago, the emperor even gave him a special imperial edict. How is that Xiao Mountain? How long has it been? Has he asked Jin this time? This Cheng Yaojin and the others were dumbfounded. How the hell would they know if Zhang Feng missed you? However, it was very obvious that he was asking Cheng Yaojin. Cheng Yaojin honestly told Li Yuan everything that Zhang Feng had done during this period of time, including the godly Dr. Sun Simiao's visit to Xiao Mountain, as well as Yu Shernan's visit to Xiao Mountain. He told Li Yuan everything in detail. From time to time, Li Yuan would moan and groan like a child. This scoundrel, he took Zhen's holiday residence. Has he ever stayed there? Zhen really misses Zhen's holiday residence. When Yu Qigong heard this, he almost sprained his old waist. Motherf **Ker, this brat is really audacious. He even dared to mess with retired emperor's holiday residence. However, at this moment, he did not dare to say anything. He only heard Cheng Yaojin say honestly, replying retired emperor, Whether the gate of the holiday residence faces east or west, this brat doesn't even know. However, Miss Jingshu often went over to arrange things. It seems like she wants to use the holiday residence as a wedding room. When Li Yuan heard this, he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. If Zhen had held back at that time, this holiday residence would still be Zhen's. If Zhang Feng had never stayed there, then he could act shamelessly and this holiday residence would still be his. However, this Jingshu was not easy to deal with. When he thought of this, Li Yuan gnashed his teeth fiercely. This brat is really fast. This Jingshu is Zhen's. Forget it. Is that scoundrel in the tavern? Zhen has been looking for him for half a month, wanting to find him to play poker. This brat definitely knows that he is not Zhen's opponent, so he hid and even threw the holiday residence to his woman to take care of. This really infuriates old man to death. The three of them were like fools, smiling obsequiously. What did they dare to say? Although retired emperor was now somewhat muddle-headed, how could he be a muddle-headed person to be able to conquer the Tang dynasty? Chapter 664. The three people did not dare to say. They did not even dare to let out a fart. After Li Yuan finished complaining, he took a sip of tea and asked, "Just now, I heard the three of you quarreling from afar. What are you quarreling about? What has it got to do with Zhang Feng? Did this kid come back? Causing trouble as soon as he came back. He really needs to be taught a lesson." When Yu Qigong heard that, he could not help but roar in his heart. What the retired emperor said is right. This kid is a little bastard. Just now, this official was played by him like a monkey in the small tavern. When Li Yuan heard that, he could not help but be amused. Pointing at Cheng Yaojin, he asked, "What's going on here?" Cheng Yaojin said in a muffled voice, "He was sold by Zhang Feng and even counted the money for Fengzi." Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Come. This matter is interesting. Interesting. Tell me what's going on. Li Yuan waved his hand and laughed loudly while holding his stomach. Only then did Cheng Yaojin tell this matter again. Yu Qigong wanted to directly jump into the lake and drown himself. It was 2F*King embarrassing. After Li Yuan finished listening, tears came out of his eyes. "You deserve it. Who told you to kick someone's door in the morning? If this happened to me, I would definitely exterminate his family. And you kid are too fierce, right? As soon as you enter, you strangle people's necks when you see them?" Yu Qigong's face turned green. He could only say in a muffled voice, "Isn't this because I drank too much beer and the roasted chicken wings were too fragrant? I couldn't hold it in. I squatted at the door and instantly couldn't hold it in." Li Yuan forcefully held back his laughter and said, "There are places everywhere. Why do you have to go in and pee? Could it be that your corner is not good?" When Yu Qigong heard that, he said in a muffled voice, "But the retired emperor once decreed that in order to keep Chang'an city clean and tidy, no urination or defecation is allowed. Otherwise, your tools will be confiscated." Li Yuan was stunned. "Did we say that?" Hearing that, the three hurriedly nodded. Li Yuan stroked his beard and said indifferently, "You guys remembered wrongly. This is definitely not what I said." When the three of them heard this, they were also convinced. Li Yuan also changed the topic. "But you, brat, are really a tiger. Do you know that the barbecue you eat and the beer you drink are all made by that brat? Not only that, the fine salt you are eating now is also made by that brat. Now you should feel lucky. If this brat poisoned you to death today, Zhen and the emperor will not say a single good word for you. Do you believe it?" Yu Qigong's expression instantly changed. Looking at Cheng Yaojin, she grabbed his hairpin and asked, "Is what retired emperor said true?" Cheng Yaojin slapped his hand away, rolled his eyes and snorted. "Lao Tzu already told you, but you didn't listen." Buzz. Yu Qigong's vision instantly turned black, and he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. This this joke is too big. Retired emperor really didn't say anything wrong. If Zhang Feng wanted to kill him today, the emperor really wouldn't give him an explanation. Thinking about that fine salt, not to mention military studies, just this fine salt, beer, and barbecue, no one would speak for him. Okay, Zhen won't scare you guys anymore. Tell me, why did you guys go to Fengzi? Retired Emperor, we found out that Fengzi has some military studies in his hands, so we went to ask for advice. Who would have thought that this grandson is not honest? Yu Qigong still wanted to complain, but Li Yuan rolled his eyes and automatically filtered his words. Military studies? What is this thing? Isn't it just military books and military strategies? What's so good about this thing to learn? Retired Emperor, this thing. Yu Qigong was unhappy and talked about what happened after. Anyway, he was almost damaged now, and he urgently wanted to regain a bit of confidence from Li Yuan. He suffered such a big loss, but to be able to get this thing, there was also merit. Sure enough, when Li Shimin heard this, he stretched out his hand and said, "You said you made a copy?" Yu Qigong nodded. "Let Shen have a look." Li Yuan couldn't help but put away his joke. Although he sat in the depths of the palace all day, he knew everything that happened outside like the back of his hand. He was still very worried about this Tubo matter, but in this case such a thing actually came out. Obviously, this was what the emperor got from Zhang Feng. Otherwise, this kid would definitely not be willing to say such a good thing. When Li Yuan saw this blueprint, as well as the things that were written densely with tiny words, he couldn't help but be shocked. What is the origin of this kid? If I didn't know his background, Zhen would really think that he was a god from heaven. Have you guys tested this training method? How is the effect? Replying to the emperor, we have tried it, it's really amazing. When Li Yuan heard this, he couldn't help but be unable to sit still. Looking at the three people, he asked, "Do you guys still remember the imperial edict that the emperor bestowed to Zhang Feng last time? Tell Zhen again properly." Zhen listens, and this academy's matter. Yes. When Cheng Yaojin heard this, he told Li Yuan about the academy's teaching classification, as well as what he saw and heard on Shao Mountain last time. Li Yuan couldn't help but be stunned. He stood up in surprise and asked, "You said that this academy not only has military studies, but also science, psychology, and that medicine?" Replying to the retired emperor, "Yes. Prepare the carriage, go to the tavern." Chapter 665. Li Yuan really couldn't sit still. Along the way, he pulled Cheng Yaojin to sit in the palanquin. Cheng Yaojin felt like he was sitting on pins and needles, but he was still detailed and honest like a good baby. Whatever Li Yuan asked, he would answer. Just like that. The two of them sat in an ordinary palanquin, disguised as they went out of the palace, and then circled around a few times. Under the crooked tree in Tonghui Lane, Cheng Yaojin was kicked down by Li Yuan, who ordered him to guard Tonghui Lane and not let even a fly in. Only then did he impatiently urge the palanquin driver to come to the tavern. At this time, at the entrance of the tavern, Zhang Feng sat cross-legged under the crooked tree, looking at the wooden door that had just been replaced, which was very different from the original color of the house. He wondered if he should replace the whole house with iron. Even that door directly changed to look like a mace. How long had it been since he knew Laoli? The door had been broken at least 3 times. If it was kicked down, then wouldn't everyone in Chang'an city want to come and kick his door? Then what would Zhang Feng become? And just as Zhang Feng was sketching in his mind whether to replace the iron door or rebuild a reinforced concrete house, Li Yuan's excited voice sounded at the door. "Boy, old man is here." This sudden voice gave Zhang Feng a big fright. But this voice in the whole Chang'an city, only old man Li had it. It was arrogant, unruly. Zhang Feng couldn't help but have a headache. He got up and looked at Li Yuan, who walked down the palanquin in a hurry, and said, "Old man Li, what are you dressed up like?" He suspected that old man Li ran out of a mental hospital. His hair was casually tied on his head, and there were even a few big red flowers on his head. The robe on his body was also askew. Li Yuan also didn't care about what Zhang Feng said. He waved his hand and pulled Zhang Feng into the tavern. He glanced at the door and said, "Brat, you should install a door." Hearing this, Zhang Feng's eyes couldn't help but light up. In an instant, countless kinds of doors as thick as city gates flashed through his mind. However, he also heard Li Yuan's teasing. After all, even if this thing was made, where would he put it? Zhang Feng invited the old man to sit down and pointed at the beer and white wine. Li Yuan chose the latter. The two of them sat down. Li Yuan did not care about his image as he drank his wine and looked at Zhang Feng, clicking his tongue nonstop. Zhang Feng felt goosebumps all over his body. "Old man, is your tongue okay?" How could Li Yuan not know that Zhang Feng was mocking him? "You brat, you've been insulting the old man since we met. Do you really think that the old man is senile?" Zhang Feng pursed his lips. Li Yuan continued. "Last time you tricked the old man and won the old man's resort. You tell me what to do." Zhang Feng was stunned. He suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a land deed in the cellar. He said, "If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. I'll go take a look some other day." "All right, you brat, don't say anything else. The resort is yours. However, this thing, it's really not easy for you to take." Li Yuan's arrival. Zhang Feng really didn't expect it. However, he could more or less think of something. However, when he came up and said this, Zhang Feng was really a little dumbfounded. "Uncle, you're going a little overboard here. I won this with my own ability. If you didn't mention this, I really would have forgotten. When the time comes, I might still give it to that brat Li Gan. However, since you said this, then I really won't give it to him." Li Yuan really didn't plan to take it back. He was just angry. He pulled up his sleeves and took out a deck of poker cards from the trash. He said, Come, come. Let's play again. Old man doesn't believe that I can't beat you this time." How could Zhang Feng dare to play again with Li Yuan? He heard from Chen Tiniu that this master basically turned the house upside down. He looked for people to play poker every day. Although this skill was not considered a master, with Zhang Feng's current ability, if he wanted to win, he would have to rely on his own ability. However, the academy's matters were a mess now. How could he have the time to do this? Seeing that there was still more than a month left, the academy was about to be completed. The books and teaching materials were still not settled. How could Zhang Feng not be anxious? He thought that Li Yuan came because of the military studies matter. He was originally prepared to show off. However, looking at it now, he didn't come because of that matter. However, Zhang Feng couldn't help but wonder. It seemed that this old guy didn't know. However, that didn't make sense. Lao Li came back yesterday. Moreover, today's matter was so big. It was impossible that Lao Li didn't know. Moreover, he even dug a hole for Lao Li. There was no reason for Lao Li to not see it. However, the old master actually didn't know? Then there was something to be said. Li Yuan saw that Zhang Feng didn't want to play cards. He could only put away the cards and hold on to him tightly. However, he didn't let go of the courtyard. "Kid, do you know how much money that courtyard spent? Last time, my skills weren't as good as others. However, this matter, old man really has to argue with you." "Stop!" Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted for him to stop. "Old master, you should also know about my matters, right? I'm here on the emperor's orders. If you blindly meddle and the emperor blames, I won't be able to shoulder it." Li Yuan didn't even need to think. This kid was fooling people. Even if Li Shimin dared to say that, now that he Lao Tzu was here, even if Li Shimin and Li Shimin came, what could he do? "Kid, don't think that you can fool the old man with this. Do you think that the old man is really muddle-headed? Come. Let's talk about the matter of this courtyard today." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Isn't it just a courtyard? Do you need to go so far? However, Zhang Feng's eyes turned. He sighed and said, "Ayaya, forget it. I thought that the old master was really loyal. So it's still like this. However, tsk, isn't it just a courtyard? In a moment, this kid will return the deed to you." When Li Yuan saw that this kid actually returned the courtyard to him, he couldn't help but become anxious. Today he really didn't come to the courtyard. He shot a glance at Zhang Feng. How could he not know that this kid was also testing him? Li Yuan said indifferently, "That's enough. Don't think that the old man doesn't know. That courtyard, your woman has already prepared it for you. Your mouth says it's good, but what did you do behind the scenes?" Chapter 666. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Ever since he won this villa at the gambling table last time, he had completely forgotten about this matter. If it weren't for the old man mentioning it today, He might not even remember that there was such a thing. But where did Jingshu get this news? Why did she go to tidy up the house? However, Zhang Feng instantly understood that this must have been spread by Chen Tiniu, that big mouth. When he saw a woman, he didn't even know how to walk. As long as Jingshu slightly thought about it, none of them would be able to fight. No wonder the old man would be so angry. But this wasn't right. Even if Jingshu went to tidy it up again, the villa had never been lived in before. This wasn't a big deal, right? Why didn't he want the villa now that it was returned to him? No. There was a ghost. There was a big ghost inside. Sure enough, Li Yuan's words instantly made Zhang Feng understand. Kid, I heard that your house on Xiao Mountain was built differently from the houses at the foot of the mountain, and all the houses in the Tang dynasty. Zhang Feng nodded. He didn't understand what the old man was selling in his gourd, but Zhang Feng also had his own plans. He patted his chest and said, That's needless to say. This is our Zhang Feng's product. How can it be compared with these ordinary adobe houses? Moreover, this academy is something that I poured my heart and soul into. Shouldn't I tidy it up properly? Li Yuan glanced at Zhang Feng and said smugly, Do you know that this brick wall can only be used by those rich and powerful people with meritorious deeds? I know, but aren't we viscounts now? In any case, we're also people with status. We can also use this brick, right? Besides, this is the academy. There's no rule that says that the academy can't use bricks, right? During the Tang dynasty, there were rules governing the use of bricks. Ordinary people would either build mud houses or use stone strips to build their houses. However, bricks were strictly controlled. After all, they were not only used to build houses, but also the main material for building city walls. Those who were not powerful and meritorious were not qualified to use them. If bricks were used rashly, then the slave would be demoted to the border area and would never be able to enter the city. As for the rich merchants, they would be demoted to slaves. Similarly, he would never be able to rise again. However, the academy was different. Originally, there were not many people who built academies in the Tang dynasty. Moreover, the academy did not explicitly state that bricks could not be used, so Zhang Feng took advantage of this loophole. Even if he was caught, he wasn't afraid. On the one hand, he was building an academy. If anyone dared to say anything, then please take out the relevant documents and say that the Tang dynasty's law stated that the building of an academy could not be done by turning stones. If anyone dared to take out something, then he would definitely become the target of the world's literati. On the other hand, he was a viscount at this time, the Viscount of Lingshan. The bricks he was using now were not the common black bricks in the Tang dynasty, and they were not as big as the bricks in the present. His red bricks were the ones in the future. This kind of brick did not belong to the category of bricks used by the government. Therefore, Zhang Feng wasn't afraid that the government would find trouble with him. Seeing that he couldn't threaten Zhang Feng, Li Yuan had to give up. Li Yuan snorted twice and then gave up. Boy, you have foresight. If the higher-ups investigate this thing, something will happen sooner or later. Fortunately, the old man still has some connections in the court. If you ask the old man, maybe the old man. Okay. Old man, you'd better put it away. Could it be that the person you know is more powerful than Zhang Sun Wuji, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, and the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice? Li Yuan glared. In the end, there was nothing he could do. He could only snort twice again and say, Ayaya, you boy, you don't know how to respect the old and love the young at all. I don't know how you are a teacher. How do you want to educate your students? If all the students you teach in the future are like you, how can it be? If there is no one watching over you, boy, won't you turn the sky upside down? After Li Yuan finished speaking, he patted his forehead and said, I remember now. That Yu Shernan was also tricked by you to go up the mountain. That godly Dr. Sun Simiao also went up the mountain. The old man also heard that Yu Shernan has already announced that he will stop writing. Moreover, he seems to be looking for Chu Suiliang and the others. This is all thanks to you, boy, right? Zhang Feng was talked about by Li Yuan in such a way that he couldn't figure out what Li Yuan was going to do in an instant. He looked at Li Yuan suspiciously and asked, Old man, what do you want to say? Li Yuan didn't say anything. He only took out a brocade-covered item from his embroidered robe and patted it in his hand, saying, "The old man has a volume of Shangshu here. Boy, you should know its weight, right?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng's eyes instantly widened to the size of copper bells. Shangshu. This was one of the 5 classics of Confucianism. Back in the Western Jin dynasty, wasn't this thing lost? If this was true, then how could it be in the old man's hands? Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel his heart heat up. With a bang, he stood up. And Li Yuan seemed to have long known the fatal attraction of this thing to scholars. Instead, he covered the bamboo slip with his embroidered robe. Looking at the slowly approaching Zhang Feng, he said, "Boy, what do you want to do? Don't come over." Zhang Feng rubbed his hands and said, "The old man is really loyal. This boy here really lacks this kind of good thing. If you are willing to part with it, we can talk about anything." Chapter 667. The Shangshu in the annotations to the 13 classics, that was commonly used in later generations, was the difference between Jinwen Shangshu and Guwen Shangshu. In fact, this thing was very easy to understand. The book Shangshu had long been lost in the West Jin dynasty. Later, in archaeology, and from the words of the previous dynasties, it was compiled. Therefore, only the Shangshu after the West Jin dynasty was actually a fake Shangshu, also called Jinwen Shangshu. The Shangshu before the West Jin dynasty was the real Guwen Shangshu. Zhang Feng was in college before. He was fooled by others that the girl in the ancient literature department was particularly good, so he stupidly took this course. But after he went, he was dumbfounded. There were only 3 people in this class. And the 2 of them were rough men, plus a dinosaur girl. How many King mud horses did he have in his heart? But it was too late to run away. After all, as long as he took the course, he would need to count credits when he graduated. In addition, the female professor finally saw a normal human being who was willing to take this elective course. She couldn't help but treat Zhang Feng as a treasure and take care of him. However, at that time, Zhang Feng only felt that this course was so good that he wanted to die. But now he really had to thank the female professor. If she hadn't forcibly instilled the knowledge of ancient literature at that time, not to mention other things, he wouldn't have been able to learn the 100 family names, the 3-character classic, and so on, and the 18 hygge beats that he specially studied in order to pretend to be cool and flirt with the girl in the music department next door. Although he also signed up for the music elective course. But now it seemed, he was so excited that he wanted to find an artist to draw a portrait of the professor and offer 3 incense sticks every day. However, in order not to shock the world, Zhang Feng could only give up. After all, in this era, if someone knew that your teacher was a woman, then you were done for. Therefore, when Zhang Feng saw this Shangshu that hadn't been revealed yet, he was so excited. He dared to conclude that this thing must be the Guwen Shangshu. Zhang Feng didn't ask where Li Yuan came from. Just by looking at the embroidered auspicious cloud pattern on the silk, he could see that this thing was extraordinary. If it was the Jinwen Shangshu, that kind of thing from Landa Street, did it need to be so precious? It could only be said that there was something wrong with the old man. At this moment, just as Zhang Feng's hand was about to touch Li Yuan's embroidered robe, Li Yuan smiled. He had found this item among the treasures of a great Confucian scholar of the Sui dynasty, after destroying the Sui dynasty. He also knew the value of this item, but it was not a good idea to keep it hidden in the library. The reason why he wanted to take it out today was to see if this brat knew anything about it. More importantly, he wanted to take revenge for what he had done to him. After all, after being pretentious by Zhang Feng several times, Li Yuan flew into a rage. Seeing Zhang Feng's appearance now, Li Yuan's entire body instantly felt incomparably comfortable. Boy, you should know how precious this thing is. However, this thing can't be easily imparted to others. You should understand this principle. Moreover, when the old man obtained this thing, he almost used up more than half of his family property. Otherwise, the old man wouldn't have paid any attention to the Guanlong 8 great families. Zhang Feng was a little surprised when he heard this. At this moment, the preciousness of Shangshu was even more apparent. It was too exaggerated. Although he could hear that Li Yuan was exaggerating a little, how could he not pay any attention to the Guanlong group? You're bragging, aren't you? They could make Emperor Yang of the Sui dynasty hover between life and death. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any Li Tang. You're telling me that if you didn't buy this thing, you wouldn't pay any attention to the Guanlong group? You're bragging too much. Do you think you're the Li family of Longnan of the 5 surnames and 7 watches? However, Zhang Feng didn't dare to say it directly. He could only lower his head and say, "Old man, you're awesome. Such a good thing, it must be the Guan Shangshu, right? Ha ha ha. At least you know what's good for you." Hearing this, Li Yuan laughed out loud and said while stroking his beard. The corners of Zhang Feng's mouth twitched as he watched Li Yuan unhurriedly untie the silk bag. In the next moment, a roll of slightly reddish-brown and slightly dark bamboo slips slowly leaked out. Although the silk threads connecting the bamboo slips had been replaced with new ones, based on the color of the bamboo slips, this thing was definitely the Guan Shangshu. This was a real treasure. If he could get it, then the reputation of White Deer College would instantly soar by a large margin. However, until now, Li Yuan still hadn't said what he wanted. Instead, he talked about how he obtained this thing with great difficulty. This let Zhang Feng know that the difficulty of obtaining this thing was undoubtedly greater. Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh. He resisted and didn't allow himself to look at the bamboo slips that were jingling because of Li Yuan. He said, "Although I know the preciousness of this thing, there's an old saying, a gentleman doesn't take what others like. So, forget it, forget it. To be able to see it today is also a great fortune in life." Li Yuan was stunned. He looked in astonishment at Zhang Feng, who changed his face faster than flipping a book. He asked, "Kid, this is the authentic Guan Shangshu. Don't tell me you don't want it." Chapter 668. I want it. But you made it sound so awesome. You clearly want to use the pig slaughtering knife to kill people. Do you think Lao Tzu is a fool? Is it those sour literati who see the book as if they see the soul? What do you want? If you say it will be good. Why do you have to beat around the bush? Lao Tzu doesn't care. Although this thing is good, once it exceeds Zhang Feng's tolerance, even if it's a gold mountain, Zhang Feng will turn around and leave. Want a hammer? Don't you want your life? Li Yuan also instantly felt that he had played too much. He once again saw how difficult this kid was to deal with. However, he was not discouraged. After all, this thing had aroused this kid's interest. He was not afraid that he would not take the bait. However, his purpose was definitely not this small tavern. He sighed and said, "You've been carrying it around in the yard all day. You've become useless. I heard that your Shao Mountain is doing well now. Do you want to go with Old Man for a walk? If Old Man is happy, what's wrong with giving this thing to you?" Zhang Feng was a little suspicious. However, he finally understood the old master's intention from this sentence. Did he want to go to Shao Mountain? Fine. This is what you said. Old master, I'm very straightforward. Don't play with me. If I don't play with you, why should I play with you? Li Yuan said with a smile. Later, Li Yuan called people and basically emptied Zhang Feng's wine. He also urged Zhang Feng to get a lot of delicious food. Then the group of people set off leisurely. Along the way, Zhang Feng's group attracted a lot of attention. It was basically like moving house. They brought everything, from the small chamber pot to the big road bedboard. Zhang Feng could not help but be suspicious. Is this old master planning to settle down on Shao Mountain? Zhang Feng did not know how to ride a horse. In the end, he had no choice but to arrange a sedan chair. Only then did the group of people leave Chang'an city and leisurely head toward Shao Mountain. Along the way, Zhang Feng was thinking about the book, Shangshu, and what the old man was going to do next. However, no matter how much he thought about it, Zhang Feng still couldn't figure out what the old man was going to do. However, Zhang Feng discovered more and more that he could not see through Li Yuan. He was harder to deal with than Lao Li. At the very least, he could tell something from Li Shimon's words and deeds. However, this old man simply didn't play his cards according to common sense. This was what gave Zhang Feng a headache. In the end, Zhang Feng didn't think about it anymore. Once he went up Shao Mountain, it would be better to get rid of the old man as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would be cheated badly. Wasn't it just a villa? How much could it be worth? At most, it would be worth 1,000 taels of gold, right? But why didn't he let it go? Zhang Feng didn't know the scale of this villa, nor had he seen it. Otherwise, if he saw the villa, which occupied an area not much smaller than Shao Mountain Academy, Zhang Feng would shut up. He would definitely wake up laughing in his dreams. However, these were all in the future. At this time, with the bumps of the sedan chair and the noises, the sedan chair finally stopped at the market at the foot of Shao Mountain. Getting off the sedan chair, looking at the scene at the foot of Shao Mountain, Li Yuan couldn't help but feel a little confused. Old man remembers that this place was originally a barren land. Boy, is this really Shao Mountain? Zhang Feng looked around proudly and said, Old man, what do you think of this place? Li Yuan pointed to the market here and asked, These people here, did they all come here when Shao Mountain was established? Shao Mountain. When Z was conquering the world, Li Yuan had been stationed here, so he still had a little influence here. This was actually a barren mountain. But how long had this boy been here? The plain at the foot of the mountain had been slowly flattened out. There were banks, food stalls, and even thatched sheds. Moreover, there was an inn written on a piece of tree bark. Although most of the buildings here were now built with thatched sheds and tree shacks, Li Yuan could faintly feel that in time, this place would become the second Chang'an city. No, it was already the case. After all the way here, there were only a few people who could afford to buy in Chang'an city. What about here? Brothels and banks were complete, and the people here seemed to be much richer than the people in Chang'an city. Bargaining could be seen everywhere. Even here, Li Yuan saw that many merchants were transporting wood and stone. Looking at their posture, they wanted to do a big job. This was all made by this boy. Zhang Feng shrugged and said, Old man, there is something you don't know, right? Actually, business is like a piece of meat. When the meat is placed here, there will naturally be people who will smell the meat and come. Slowly, not only will there be meat and people who eat it, there will also be a large number of things that will be born from the operation. Business is a gathering of people, not a decision that can be made by one person. I just dug up Shao Mountain here and stepped out a road here. Naturally, people will follow this road and slowly turn it into a spacious road that can reach directly to Chang'an. Li Yuan always felt that Zhang Feng's words were very roundabout and scholarly, but his intuition told him that what Zhang Feng said was really so reasonable. He could not help but ask in surprise, Is this what your academy wants to teach? Chapter 669. Zhang Feng took a deep breath and said, This is a kind of knowledge. My teacher once said it, a great person once said it. The sample meaning of these words is like this. Actually, there is no road in this world. When more people walk, there will naturally be a road. Great person, there is no road in this world. When more people walk, there will naturally be a road. Li Yuan was silent. His expression was somewhat frightening. After Zhang Feng finished talking about this matter, the two of them walked along the small path and climbed the mountain. Along the way, Li Yuan was pondering over Zhang Feng's words, until when they could no longer climb, Li Yuan's accompanying bodyguard hurriedly brought over Zhang Feng's reclining chair. Even Zhang Feng's tiger skin that had been missing for a long time, under Zhang Feng's shocked and angry gaze, slowly placed it under Li Yuan's buttocks. After resting for a while, Li Yuan looked at the whitewashed white houses halfway up the mountain, or houses that were being built with red bricks. He asked in surprise, Fengzi, what is going on with the houses here? Why does it look like every house is almost exactly the same? And this layout, old man can't quite understand. It seems like there are 2 floors. Could this row of houses be a single family? But why does it look like there are countless families? At first, no one could see the reason for Zhang Feng's houses. However, only when the foundation of this house was completed and the walls were slowly being built, could one see that this house was very different from all the houses of this era. Because these houses were all conjoined houses of the later era. That is to say, 2 rooms for a family. Although they looked somewhat short and small, not as large as the houses of this era. In terms of function and the overall structure of the house, they flung the houses of this era by several streets. At the very least, Zhang Feng was not bragging. At this time, with these people under him now, if they were to go out and build a house, they would not need 5 days to complete the main frame of a house. If it was an adobe house, it would be strange if you could finish it without a month or so. On the other hand, the red bricks burned quickly. It was not as thick as the green bricks of this era. Therefore, in Li Yuan's view, this house seemed to collapse with a push. Facing Li Yuan's inquiry, Zhang Feng just smiled. Old man, there's something you don't know. Excluding the craftsmen and workers, there are more than 1,000 students on the White Deer Academy's mountain. Although I allowed them to participate in the construction of my house, it's not like anyone can build a house just because they want to. After all, if someone is opportunistic and casually builds a shack for me with a few tree branches, then wouldn't my test become a mere decoration? But I don't have enough manpower right now. Moreover, we don't have enough funds, so I came up with this brilliant idea. Although this house doesn't look sturdy and the walls are so thin, I can guarantee that this thing will become a house that everyone in the Tang dynasty wants to live in. Li Yuan's interest could not help but be aroused. Then I'd like to see what's so different about your house. Although your house seems to be built faster than that adobe house from what I've seen, the bricks aren't cooked yet. Can they withstand a punch from a strong man? Zhang Feng smiled. Pointing at a Jinwu guard behind Li Yuan, he said, "Why don't you let your guard go and push it for me to see? Old man, let's make a bet." Stop. As soon as Li Yuan heard Zhang Feng mention a bet, he felt uncomfortable all over. Now that he heard Zhang Feng mention the bet again, how could he not have goosebumps all over his body? Waving his hand, he let the Jinwu guard test the wall. Under the Jinwu guard's side impact, although the wall was like a bare bamboo pole, swaying nonstop in the wind, it still did not fall. And those craftsmen only looked at the Jinwu guard and continued to work, too lazy to care. It seemed that this kind of thing happened every day. This time, Li Yuan was somewhat unable to sit still. Hinting the Jinwu guard to pick up a few bricks to test, Li Yuan became even more stupefied. His sharp eyes could not help but see that someone actually added lime powder into a pile of silt-like things, causing Li Yuan to become stupefied again. Fengzi, could it be that the thing that can make the wall so sturdy is this silt? Zhang Feng glanced at the cement. He did not feel like explaining anything to Li Yuan. He only said faintly, "This is a kind of adhesive that I invented. Once it completely absorbs these bricks and dries up, if a strong man like you bumps into it again, then the only thing that will be broken will be his arm." Hearing this, Li Yuan could not help but be shocked. A moment later, Li Yuan got up, squinted his eyes, and then pointed at the faintly visible waterfall. He said, "Fengzi, old man does not want my villa anymore, but old man has a condition. Somewhere make a slightly bigger house for old man. Old man. It must be better than theirs." Zhang Feng glanced at the brick waterfall. "Isn't it just a villa? Deal. But this shangshu must be given to me as a deposit? After all, the cost of building this villa will definitely be dozens of times more than the houses these people live in. When the time comes to build it, you will know that your shangshu was not spent in vain." Chapter 670. Actually, there was a reason why Zhang Feng agreed to Li Yuan's request. After all, building a villa for Yu Shinan and the other masters was the same as building another one. Anyway, they were all together. When the time came, it would still be a connected villa. This would save a lot of trouble. If he really only built one for the old master, then he had to wait. After all, he really didn't have the time and spare money now. As the two walked, they discussed the matter of the villa. With that said, Li Yuan's eyes became more and more heated. After learning that Yu Shinan and the others would be Li Yuan's neighbors in the future, Li Yuan was very excited. After all, if he were to be alone in this academy, he would definitely be driven crazy. However, no matter what Zhang Feng said, Li Yuan just smiled and bypassed the matter of shangshu, which made Zhang Feng so angry that his face turned red and his neck thick. But he still couldn't do anything to Li Yuan. In this way, one old and one young quarreled all the way up Shao Mountain, leaving only the stunned craftsmen and students on the ground. At this time, Hao Chujun and the others who originally wanted to come up and say hello saw this situation. It was not until a long time after Zhang Feng and the others had left that they reacted. What's this situation? Who's this old man? Li Yifu looked at the long line of furniture moving and couldn't help but be stunned. This house was all made of mahogany. Although many things were packed in that big wooden box, from the carved patterns on the wooden box and the mahogany material, it could be seen that the old man's background was definitely not simple. This doesn't look like a great scholar. If it's a great scholar, why would he quarrel with the dean like this? But it seems that he wants to live on the mountain for a long time. There's no harm in visiting more in the future. Guo Jingyi picked up a pile of cement and stood behind the crowd and said, "Okay, he's already up the mountain. After all, this has nothing to do with us. It's better to finish the course properly." Hao Chujun heard this and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. "How long have we been here? Why do I always feel that Dean Zhangfeng is ordering us around like long-term workers?" Li Yifu heard this and couldn't help but put on a straight face and said, "What do you mean? Are you questioning the dean? There's an ancient saying. All right. Don't talk to me like that. Do you guys want credits or not? Now the academy is still a wasteland. How can it have the time to teach you? Don't tell me it's on this barren mountain?" Just as the few of them were muttering, Dugo appeared out of nowhere and berated everyone. He then took a look at Zhang Feng and the Grand Emperor's figures and hurriedly ran up the mountain. This was a big matter. The retired emperor seemed to want to stay here for a long time. How could this be? With retired emperor's temperament, he would definitely ruin the atmosphere here. He had to tell this matter to Li Chengqian and the others as soon as possible, so that they could think of a way to trick the retired emperor down the mountain. Otherwise, no one would have a good life in the future. When Dugo climbed up the mountain, Zhang Feng had already brought Li Yuan into the wooden house that Zhang Feng was temporarily staying in. Seeing this situation, Dugo asked Old He and the others where Li Chengqian and the others went. Only then did he hurriedly run to the chicken farm. From afar, he saw Li Chengqian and Ching Chimo sitting on a rock by the river, directing a large group of children on the mountain. They were leaning on shelled eggs. Dugo couldn't care about anything else. He hurriedly pulled Li Chengqian and the others to the side and said, "The retired emperor went up the mountain." What? When the few of them heard this, they couldn't help but ask in unison as if they were constipated. When did this happen? Just now, with Fengzi. When the few of them heard this, they couldn't help but feel like their heads were about to explode. The retired emperor was good at everything except that he was now obsessed with poker cards. When he saw someone, even if he squatted on the floor, he could squat for an entire day to play with that person. He wouldn't stop until that person was left with only a piece of cloth. At this time, Li Yuan was in the palace. That matter was even more difficult to avoid than the god of plagues. There was no other way. Everyone lost miserably. Besides, they were all young people. Could an old man like you get involved? Thinking like this, the few of them instantly lost their calm. They hurriedly brought a beggar's chicken and ran to Zhang Feng's small house. There was no other way. If the retired emperor stayed here, no one would be able to be at peace. Not far away, Ma Zhou, who was following old eunuch Gao to feed pigs, and the old eunuch saw the crown prince and the others roasting meat excitedly just now. The old eunuch's heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. He had long wanted to go over and freeload a chicken. Ever since he ate it twice last time, this thing always lingered in his mind. Not to mention, previously in the palace, it was the food that the emperor and empress pulled down. It basically went into their stomachs. They were used to eating good food. Although this porridge was very good, they couldn't eat porridge all day, right? Moreover, they were eating porridge on the side while watching others nibble on the chicken. Who could stand this stimulation? However, at this time, when old Gao saw the few of them leaving in a hurry, he couldn't help but push Ma Zhou and said, "Boy, do you want to eat chicken?" Chapter 671. Li Yuan's ostentatious display. It had already spread like wildfire on the mountain. Especially now, it had just reached Yushur hour, which was also the time Zhang Feng set for eating. Although the people of Chang'an liked to wake up early in the morning to eat, and then say that they were going for a stroll, or to find something to do, to earn money, and so on, and only at night would they eat here. But Zhang Feng's place was completely different. Eating at usual hour was right. But everyone only had half a bowl of porridge, plus a millet steamed bun mixed with unknown things. At noon, everyone had a big bowl of porridge, plus a black millet steamed bun. There was a difference between the porridge in the morning and at noon. In the morning, there was no meat added, and everyone could not chew out a trace of meat in the thick porridge. But at noon, it was different. This porridge was as thick as the dry rice they ate on a daily basis. The most important thing was that there was meat in the porridge. If they were lucky, if they could stir out a few meat bones, that night when they were hungry, they could use the broken pot to cook it, add some tender roots dug out from the soil, and make do with a meal. Or they could burn the chicken bones and pig bones in the fire and grind them into powder. These were all good things. But the meal at night was different. The porridge was still the same porridge, but everyone had to take 2 bowls. A bowl of porridge, a bowl of chicken mixed with wild vegetables, and unknown things, meat soup. There was pork, goose meat, eggs, and so on. It could be said that this meal at usual hour was very much anticipated by everyone. It was also at this time every day. All the people on Wuxia Mountain, no matter how tired they were, would raise their bowls high, as if they were celebrating the new year, and grin foolishly. But today was different. Li Yuan's high-profile appearance ceremony was everyone lining up to get food, or squatting on the ground to eat the food, which they talked about with great relish. You didn't see that scene today. You could smell the fragrance of wine from afar. This wine aroma, it's like the imperial wine of the palace. The people of Tonghuifang, who were squatting together and separated from these people, looked at those people who were talking animatedly as if they were looking at fools, and said, "Only you can. Do you know that the wine that the old man took is also our dean's?" Hearing this, in an instant, those people and craftsmen could not stay calm. What? What did you say? This wine was made by the dean? Impossible. When Lao Tzu was rich before, he was also a person who drank wine. He even drank that one copper, a bamboo barrel of beer. That thing, that taste is simply better than that wine. This wine is really brewed by the dean? Doesn't that mean that our dean is from heaven? By the way, you guys seem to be from the same street as the dean. Can you tell me about the dean? Tonghuifang's people, as they heard this, they were eating, and eat to eat, while we're talking about our dean. That's an incredible figure. Do you all know Chang'an University? Hearing this, everyone nodded their heads like chickens pecking rice, slurping the porridge along the eaves of the bowls, and staring at the people of Tonghuifang. The person who spoke put down the bowl that was bigger than his face, wiped his mouth and said, "Actually, this dean, I heard long ago that when he was born, guess what?" "What?" "Have you ever seen a child not cry after the midwife gave birth? But our dean is different. The moment he was born, he looked up to the sky and laughed." Hearing this, everyone could not help but be dumbfounded. Everyone asked curiously, "Then isn't the dean really a god? Who doesn't cry when they are born? This is really different. No wonder he was conferred the title of Viscount by the emperor at such a young age. And he has such ability. He is different from us from the moment he was born." That's right. This is what the temporary chancellor of Chang'an University, the old scholar, said personally. And you have not seen it. Every time the dean does a good deed, his head is shining with golden light. Everyone was shocked. No wonder the dean never wore a hat. So it was because wearing a hat affected his supernatural powers? In that case, ayaya, aren't we doing something for the immortals? The people of Tonghuifang snorted. Their meaning was self-evident. Don't you eat? Even eating can't stop your mouths, can it? Old He and the others, who had just finished distributing the food, were listening while distributing the food. At first they did not think much of it, but the more they talked, the more they were going overboard. If they let these people continue to gossip, what would happen? After Old He shouted, he did not care about these people anymore. Instead, he took out a big pot of braised red pig trotters from the temporary kitchen and kicked Juju, who was holding a bowl to drink the braised water, and said, "Damn it, eat, 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 eat. If you follow those stubborn people all day, you will eat to death sooner or later. Hurry up and send the food to Fengzi." Oh. Only then did Guzi stare at the bowl that belonged to him, carried the bowl of porridge, and followed Old He into the small wooden house. Chapter 672. The atmosphere in the small wooden house was somewhat strange. At this time, Zhang Feng had a cold face, his back facing Li Yuan and Li Chengqian as he ate the beggar's chicken. Li Yuan sniffed from time to time. That aroma instantly made Li Yuan's stomach growl again. What was even more infuriating was that those little bastards were eating while smacking their lips. Not only that, but they were also drinking to their heart's content. They didn't even look at him. This made Li Yuan explode with anger. Qian, Tai Niu, and you little bastards, get over here and kneel down for old man. Li Yuan finally couldn't take it anymore. Hearing this, Li Chengqian and the others' faces instantly changed greatly. Here Lao Tzu is the dean. If you go over, fine, tomorrow, get the hell down the mountain for Lao Tzu. This time, these few second-generation masters were in a difficult situation. They clearly knew that these two grandpas were angry, but they still bumped into them. This was great. No matter how today's matter was resolved, with Li Yuan's habit of holding grudges, in the future, no matter if he stayed on the mountain or went down the mountain, when the time came, these few people wouldn't have a good time. But what could they do? This was all Feng Zi's business. You two immortals fighting. What did it have to do with us? And just at this time, as luck would have it, the appearance of old he and the stupefied Guzi instantly made Li Chengqian and the others feel as if they had met a big savior. Wow. It smells so good. This is the braised pig trotters you tinkered with? Come, Grandpa, you also want to eat some? You can smell the fragrance of this thing. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to *CK his mother. Under the fragrance of the braised pig trotters, Cheng Chimo was the first to be unable to resist surrendering. He grabbed a pig trotter, hugged it, and gnawed on it. On the stubble on his mouth, fat dripped down from the corners of his mouth, causing Li Yuan's eyes to turn red. He personally picked up a pig trotter for Li Yuan and said, "This old man, please have a taste. This was made by our Fengzi after staying up late a few days ago." He said that there would be an important guest these few days. Fortunately, I heard a large group of magpies chirping here early this morning. Look, just as it was braised, you came. When Uncle He was at the door, he glanced around and saw two people fighting. From the matter of the servants and servants, Li Yuan brought up the mountain, as well as those fellows he had never seen in his entire life. How could he not know that this master was a person who could not be provoked? But now Feng Zi was actually fighting with him? Wasn't that just asking for trouble? Under Uncle He's excuse, Li Yuan still could not resist the temptation of delicious food in the end. After looking at the bright red pig trotters, Li Yuan snorted twice. For the sake of this pig trotter, kid, old man will let you off for now. Let's argue after the meal. I thought you weren't going to eat anymore. Zhang Feng also snorted. Then, as if in a fit of pique, he glared at Li Yuan. The two just stared at each other and ate in a fit of pique, causing everyone to be dumbstruck. There was something strange. There was something very strange about this. But at this time, these two did not say anything. What could they do? Originally, they were still waiting to eat a good meal. Now it was great. They were here to eat between the cracks. However, the few of them were even more curious about what was going on with Feng Zi. Just as everyone had their own thoughts, a large pot of pig trotters was basically wiped out. Fortunately, in the end, Zhang Feng hurriedly blocked the few of them and left some for Sun Simiao, Old Gao, and the others. He also sent a jar of fine wine that he brought from the shop to each of them. Only then did he stop. Li Yuan looked at Zhang Feng's expression that was like an angry little wife, and was also speechless. After waving his hand and driving away the few bastards, he picked his teeth and took out the shangshu from his bosom and threw it to Zhang Feng. In an instant, the moment Zhang Feng hugged the shangshu, his smile was as brilliant as a flower. Yo, old man, you should be a little gentler. This thing is precious. If by any chance it bumps into something, it will make one's heart ache. Li Yuan rolled his eyes. You still know that this thing is precious? Such a precious thing. Can't old man feel some heartache? You little bastard, you actually want to be angry with me. You are simply, if it was in the past, old man would have slapped you. Zhang Feng chuckled and was not embarrassed. Instead he said, "This is your fault. You know that this kid has a one-track mind. You still want to lower yourself to my level? Isn't this what it is? Come, come, come. I will toast you with a cup of wine. Will this matter be over? Li Yuan glanced at Zhang Feng and then said lightly, Don't. This cup of wine of yours is too precious. I can't afford to drink it. Seeing that Li Yuan did not appreciate it, Zhang Feng knew that the matter was serious. Sure enough, at this time Li Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, There is no need for empty words. Old man is not interested. However, what is your academy like? Tell the old man in detail. The old man is now very interested in your academy. What do you mean? Very interested in my academy? What do you mean? Could it be that you have taken a fancy to my academy? Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. Li Yuan saw Zhang Feng's defensive face and said speechlessly, There is no other meaning. I just want to see what your academy is like. Do you think that the old man wants to snatch your academy? Chapter 673. Zhang Feng felt relieved after hearing this. But at this time, he was still a little worried. This thing was a bit difficult to take. Just now, in a fit of pique, he was actually testing the old man, but he didn't expect that the old man would actually compromise. From the foot of the mountain to the top, he had been inquiring about the academy. This matter made Zhang Feng couldn't help but mutter. If it was really that simple, then it would be good. But now, it seemed that things were far from as simple as he thought. The more this old man compromised, the more uneasy he felt. From the high-profile move of so many things when he went up the mountain today, he could see that it was not right to say that he wanted to live on the mountain for a long time. After all, there was nothing on the mountain now, and they were still squeezed together. That stench, that foot stench that could almost send people away, and that thunder-like snoring, although separated by a room, still made Zhang Feng feel like dying. But even so, Zhang Feng still forced himself to go to the academy every day. At this time, this old man came up. Where did he want to live? There was no place to live. But at this time, Zhang Feng was just guessing. He could only follow the old man's request and tell the old man about the academy in detail. After that, Li Yuan stroked his beard in thought, and then said, Kid, today's book, take it as a gift for me to be the honorary vice president. What? Zhang Feng was completely dumbfounded. He asked again, Old man, what did you say? Li Yuan said with a smile. Why is it wrong for the old man to be the honorary vice president? Not to mention others, Sun Simiao, Chu Suiliang, and Yu Shernan have to call me when they see me. Do you think you can suppress them? Zhang Feng was anxious. No, old man, what do you mean? You. Li Yuan nodded. Why not? If not, then return Shangshu. I will go down the mountain now. Don't. Zhang Feng was anxious. At this time he finally understood Li Yuan's intention. From the beginning he was inquiring about this and that, to asking for the villa, and then when he went up the mountain, he displayed his playthings with great fanfare. Good Lord, it turned out that he was digging a big hole for him. Now could Zhang Feng refuse? If she refused, what if the old man went back with great fanfare and walked down the mountain? Wouldn't that be terrible? What could Zhang Feng say? He could only give a thumbs up and say, Old master, you're awesome. You won. I'm convinced. At the same time, outside the wooden house, a few people stuck their butts out and listened through the crack of the door. They couldn't help but gasp. Oh my God! What is the old man doing? What was he thinking? He actually wants to be the honorary vice principal? This, Ching Chumo could not help but exclaim. At this time, everyone finally understood what the two of them were doing. So, the old man was using something that Zhang Feng could not bear to let go to force him to agree to let the old man be the vice principal? However, they were not fools. At this time, although everything was fine in the academy, it was only a matter of time before it aroused the dissatisfaction of the Shandong aristocrats. Another thing was the Imperial College. This was an important place for the Shandong aristocrats in Chang'an City. Before this White Deer College, it was still fine. It did not arouse the covetous eyes of the people, and they only took it as a joke. However, now that the miracle doctor went up the mountain and Yu Shernan had retired from writing, The news of Yu Shinan going up Shao Mountain would spread sooner or later. When that time came, the old man went up the mountain in a high-profile manner and took the initiative to accept the honorary vice principal. This meant that the old man was shouldering all the responsibility. Although the old man was no longer involved in the imperial court, he still had a lot of connections, especially those aristocrats. Although they did not fall for the old man's tricks, once the old man made a decision, in that case, they would still consider it carefully. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. How many valiant generals were loyal to retired emperor back then? They were all illustrious and illustrious existences. Moreover, they were not subject to the imperial court's control. If they angered Li Yuan, then could they withstand Li Yuan's fury? At the thought of this, the few of them were deeply shocked. Hurriedly leaving the small wooden hut, they arrived at a place in the valley of Shao Mountain. After lighting a bonfire, Li Chengqian said, "I suspect that today's matter was Father's idea. Otherwise, Father Emperor would definitely know about such a big matter as retired emperor leaving the palace. That means that the White Deer College incident has aroused the attention of the Shandong aristocrats after all." "Then what do you plan to do?" Zhang Sun asked. After a moment of silence, Li Chengqian said faintly, "This is not something we can worry about. We just have to take care of our own matters. However, now it's up to Fengzi. If the academy can be opened before this matter completely explodes, then this matter can be easily solved." Qing Chimo was stunned. "Speak human language, I don't understand." Li Chengqian looked at Qing Chimo and said, "At this time, we are on the side of the people. For the time being, we have the help of the great scholar Yu Shinan and others. Although we are using my name to the outside world, paper can't hide the truth. They will know that the real owner of this academy. Therefore Fengzi is the key. I am very sure that when the time comes to open the gates, those great scholars of Shandong will definitely come together. Then it will really explode." Chapter 674. Ku. Pain. Great pain. In the middle of the night, Zhang Feng's stomach was churning. He couldn't help curling up like a shrimp. Damn it, maybe they used raw water to boil the pig trotters, this motherf asterisk cur. Zhang Feng had diarrhea 5 times in one night. At this time, he only felt uncomfortable as if his whole body was about to collapse. Finally, after a violent contraction of his lower abdomen, Zhang Feng suddenly got up in a hurry, and then stumbled out of the door in a hurry. Before coming to the outhouse, he directly finished his business on the spot. Yes, he couldn't hold it anymore. After squatting for about a quarter of an hour, Zhang Feng only felt that his intestines were about to come out. Then he habitually touched his waist and suddenly remembered that he was in the Tang dynasty, and the toilet paper he carried with him was used up. Chintiniu. Da-bing. Zhang Feng had to call someone, but he didn't. Instead, Uncle He hurried over and almost kicked Zhang Feng's head. Uncle He looked at Zhang Feng in surprise and asked, "Fengzi, what's wrong with you?" "Diarrhea." "Uncle He, you came at the right time. Do you have any paper?" "Paper? No. What do you want paper for?" Zhang Feng was speechless. "To wipe my ass." Uncle He was stunned. "So, you usually use toilet paper to wipe your face?" Zhang Feng was also stunned. "What else can I do? Let's not talk about it now. Hurry up and get me some paper." Uncle He sighed and secretly called him a prodigal. Then he groped on a tree next to him and handed Zhang Feng a thick stack of leaves, saying, "I don't have any paper. That thing is precious. If you don't mind, you can make do with the leaves." In the end, Zhang Feng had no choice but to make do with it. Only then did he enter the small wooden house with old Ho's help. Their movements finally alerted Zhang Sun and the others. When they went out and saw Zhang Feng's pale face, they were scared out of their wits. "Fengzi, what's wrong with you?" "Diarrhea." After learning that Zhang Feng was suffering from diarrhea, they rubbed their sleepy eyes and left. When Old He heard Zhang Feng's voice and rushed over, Old He's wife also heard Zhang Feng's voice. At this time, she had already brought over a big bowl of ginger soup. However, there was a layer of black substance floating on the ginger soup. Upon closer inspection, it was actually charcoal powder. Come, Fengzi. Drink this and you'll feel better at night. Tomorrow morning, I'll go find Dr. Sun to take a look at you. As she spoke, Old He's wife took out a packet of white powder wrapped in Old Spring Festival couplets from her sleeve. Zhang Feng saw that this was lime powder from his kiln factory. Under his horrified gaze, Old He's wife poured a little lime powder into the bowl. Then the bowl seemed to be boiling. She held the bowl of water and handed it to Zhang Feng. It seemed that she was going to feed him. Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped her and said, No, I'll have to trouble sister-in-law to bring me a bowl of salt water and a piece of charcoal. When Old He heard that, he said with some displeasure, Fengzi, these are commonly used things. You'll be able to sleep well after a bowl. Drink it. As he spoke, Old He took the bowl and brought it to Zhang Feng's mouth. Zhang Feng had no choice. It seemed that if he didn't drink it, he wouldn't be able to have a good night. At this time, Li Chengqian and the others put on their clothes and walked out of the door. They looked at the ginger soup and said, Drink it. This thing is a good medicine. If you don't drink that, I have something good here. Do you want to try it? As he spoke, Li Chengqian took out a small porcelain bottle and tossed it in his hand. Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. But Old He's next words still made him drink this bowl of poisonous soup. Regardless of anything else, although it was a little shocking when these things were mixed together, the effect was still very good. At the very least, Zhang Feng's rumbling stomach warmed up after a bowl, and he no longer felt so uncomfortable. Seeing that Zhang Feng was fine, Old He pulled Li Chengqian out of the door and said, Young Master Li, Fengzi just asked for toilet paper. You know my situation. I can't afford it, so I'll have to trouble young Master Li to quickly buy some for Fengzi tomorrow. Li Chengqian asked in surprise, Why does he need toilet paper when he has diarrhea in the middle of the night? To wipe his butt. Old He didn't know that this thing was commonly used by people in the upper class, so he said it naturally. But when Li Chengqian heard it, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. What did you say? Fengzi wants toilet paper to wipe his butt? Old He was also stunned. Young Master Li, don't you know? What did Li Chengqian know? Even his father, the emperor of the dynasty, only gave him coarse cloth. Good lord, this kid used toilet paper? Toilet paper was not cheap in the Tang dynasty. A caddy of toilet paper cost at least 100 copper coins. How could ordinary people afford it? Moreover, this thing was thick and heavy. Only medicine shops would use a little of it, as well as during weddings and funerals. Also, during festivals, window flowers and couplets would be used a little. This was already considered extravagant. Good lord, this kid actually used toilet paper to wipe his butt? Your butt is very expensive. Chapter 675. After dealing with Old He for a while, only then did Li Chengqian walk into the wooden house with a solemn expression. He looked at Zhang Feng, who was curled up on the recliner, and asked, Fengzi, I just heard from Old He that you're going to wipe your ass with toilet paper? This time it was a big deal. In an instant, Cheng Chumo and the others who were joking with Zhang Feng were shocked. Damn Fengzi, you're so awesome? Come, let's see if your eyes are made of gold. Get lost. Zhang Feng slapped Cheng Chumo's hand away and said, What else can I use if not paper? But I forgot to buy some when I went up the mountain this time. I usually use rice paper. Toilet paper is too easy to tear. Hearing this, Li Chengqian looked at Zhang Feng in disbelief and exclaimed, You still use rice paper? Fengzi, you absolutely cannot mention this matter to anyone else. Otherwise, your academy will cease to exist. Hearing this, Zhang Feng was stunned. Looking at them with a solemn expression, he asked, Isn't it just a toilet paper to wipe your ass? Do you have to go so far? Go so far? You actually said that. Come, let me calculate for you. This toilet paper costs 500 coins, and no one needs to buy a fixed amount every year. This rice paper is even more different. It costs 1,000 strings of coins. Even the current emperor only uses a little when he writes the imperial edict. You actually use such a precious thing to wipe your ass. Li Chengqian was crazy. He must think that Zhang Feng was really crazy. If those scholars were to find out that Zhang Feng actually treated the rice paper that they were reluctant to use like this, how would they fly into a rage? But Zhang Feng was also stunned. He was anxious. Isn't it just a piece of paper? Do you have to go so far? You still say that the academy is closed? Okay. Tomorrow Lao Tzu will make you paper of a higher grade than rice paper. Isn't it just a piece of paper? As for 1,000 strings of coins? Believe it or not, if I'm willing, I can get you 300 caddies in one day. Do you believe it or not? Old man doesn't believe it. At this moment, Li Yuan's voice faintly sounded from outside the door. Although it was already the Cho hour at this time, these guys' voices were too loud. In addition, the environment had just changed, and there were many mosquitoes. How could Li Yuan sleep? At this time, with such a ruckus, Li Yuan heard everything. When he heard that Zhang Feng actually wanted to make paper, and it was the kind of paper that was better than rice paper, he finally couldn't sit still. Even he didn't dare to say this sentence. After all, rice paper was something the world was proud of. It was also the secret method of the Tang dynasty. But in Zhang Feng's hands, it was reduced to a tool to wipe his ass? How could this not make Li Yuan angry? However, he was also looking forward to it. When Zhang Feng saw the old man come out, he couldn't help but have a headache. Old man, it's the middle of the night. Why don't you sleep and come out? With your voices so loud, do you think old man can sleep? Zhang Feng was speechless. However, were you bragging just now? Or are you really planning to make paper? Zhang Feng pointed to his pale face and said with a wry smile, Look at my face. Do you think I'm joking? When Li Yuan heard this, he couldn't help but put away the joking expression on his face and said seriously, Then what are you going to do? Zhang Feng was not stupid. He glanced at Li Yuan and said, It's a secret. It can't be spread. When Li Yuan heard this, he was so angry that he almost wanted to beat him, but he still resisted and asked, Then tell me this paper, how long will it take you to make it? And how much do you plan to sell it for? At this time, after a bowl of dark cuisine, Zhang Feng finally raised his spirits and said, If we don't count the preparation time, the first time it will take 2 days. The second time will do. It only needs 1 day. You can guarantee 300 caddies every day? Li Yuan suddenly stood up and asked. Zhang Feng was stunned. This is the worst-case scenario. Under normal circumstances, it will be more than 500 caddies. This is not considered expanding the scale. Otherwise, a few thousand caddies a day is not a problem. When Li Yuan heard this, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Now, everyone was using their book collection to compete with their master's profound knowledge. And what they were competing with was nothing else but their book collection. And books were expensive. What was expensive about them? It was expensive in this paper. A book, just a casual binding, would need to consume 3 taels of rice paper. 1 tael of rice paper was 1,000 coins. This book was 3,000 strings of coins. The reason why paper was so expensive was not because of anything else, but because this manufacturing process was too troublesome. If a paper mill could produce 100 caddies a month, that was already a high yield. But what did Li Yuan just hear? He actually heard it. 300 caddies a day. And this was the worst-case scenario. If it was good, a few thousand caddies a day. What did this mean? This was a windfall. Li Yuan couldn't help but ask, How do you plan to sell this paper? How could Zhang Feng not know that this matter was serious at this time? He inadvertently fiddled with another thing that could make him rich overnight. How would he know that paper in the Tang dynasty would be so scarce? If that was the case, then what was he doing earlier? If he had made paper earlier, then wouldn't he have made a fortune? Chapter 676. Zhang Feng's stomach finally turned for the better after Sun Simiao helped him with a smile on his face. 2 days later, Zhang Feng spent most of the time in bed. That feeling. It was simply unbearable. The price Zhang Feng paid was 10 jars of white wine and 3 braised pig trotters a day. These were not important. The key was the wine. It was inconvenient for him to move now, and coupled with the shortage of food, he could not get any food to make wine. When he thought of the 10 jars of wine, Zhang Feng's heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. But there was no other way. Zhang Feng secretly called old He and Zhu Zi's father to come to the bed and said with a sobbing tone, "Old He, Zhu Zi's father, now I can only rely on the two of you. You also saw those people. They are all King ungrateful wolves." When the two heard this, they turned pale with fright and hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, what happened to you? If the problem is big, we will carry you down the mountain and let the godly doctor take a look at you. If it doesn't work, we will find a Taoist priest to exorcise you. You must not scare us." Old He and Zhu Zi's father were so anxious that they almost cried. They thought that Zhang Feng was making arrangements for his death. Zhang Feng also understood the meaning of the two, but he did not say much. He just took a breath and said with a pale face, "I have a letter here. I will have to trouble the two of you to pass it to this old man. This matter is too big. Please do not tell those ungrateful people." The two of them wiped their tears and sobbed. "Fengzi, don't worry. Although we can't pluck the stars for you, you don't have to worry about this small matter of delivering a letter. Why don't we break into the imperial palace right now and bring the imperial physician up to the mountain for you?" While speaking, the two picked up the spatula and kitchen knife in their hands and were about to run down the mountain. Zhang Feng was so scared that he hurriedly pulled them back. "I'm fine. It's just diarrhea, isn't it? Just do as I say. Also, while they're not paying attention, I've hidden 10 bags of food in the courtyard behind the tavern. Give them to the old elementary scholar. Remember, don't tell anyone about this." After the two confirmed that Zhang Feng was not going to die, they sniffled and hurriedly ran away. There was no other way. Zhang Feng was also the best at using this kind of fake but not real method. Otherwise, the people of this era were too straightforward. Plus, the people of Guangzhong did not like to lie. Zhang Feng could only secretly shout in his heart that he had sinned while secretly ordering people to brew wine. There was no other way. He could not leave this thing alone. There were wolves all around him. He had to find a safe way. After thinking for 3 days, he could only lock his gaze on the old elementary scholar. In addition, he pretended that he was about to die to fool the two of them. Now, even if the Heavenly Emperor wanted to pry something out of their mouths, it would be useless. Zhang Feng laughed mischievously. He crossed his legs, hugged his head, and closed his eyes once again. And this act of Zhang Feng's instantly stirred up big trouble. First of all, when the two walked out of Zhang Feng's house and saw the people everywhere in the embryonic form of White Deer College, how could the two hold back? They sat down beside the old neighbors of Tonghui Lane and started bawling. Everyone was stunned. When they thought about how the two of them were fine when they entered Zhang Feng's room, and how they suddenly started crying, they almost scared the hell out of everyone. The old village chief used his walking stick to hit the two of them on the back and shouted, "Fengzi, what's wrong? Why don't you two tell me?" Everyone's hearts couldn't help but thump when they saw the two of them. After sniffling twice, old He was about to say something, but the old village chief waved his hand and glared at the people beside him. He shouted, "Do you have nothing to do? Do you not want to eat any more? This is a family matter in Tonghui Lane. Why are you interfering? Get the hell out of here." When everyone heard this, they were even more certain that something had happened. But at this time, under the command of the old village chief, everyone carried the two people who were crying until their arms and legs were weak into the temporary kitchen. Everyone surrounded the two people in a circle, and then there were a few strong men who specially raised their sticks, angrily staring at anyone who dared to take a step forward. This included Du Go, who was rubbing his head and walking forward. At this moment, in the middle of the crowd, old He said, "Just now Fengzi asked us to go in." Then, the two of them spoke one after another and finally explained everything clearly. Instantly, the old women and young women in Tonghui Lane started crying. The old village chief shouted angrily, "Are you crying at a funeral? All of you were shut up by Lao Tzu. If anyone dares to spread this news, Lao Tzu will break their legs if they dare to King enter Tonghui Lane in the future." You saw it too. This is all because of this group of Curs who came to harm Fengzi. What a good kid. If it wasn't for him, would Tonghui Lane have such good days today? He's such a good kid. Ayaya, from today onwards, I will take care of Fengzi's daily needs. Don't spread this news. Let those ingrates know that no one in Tonghui Lane is easy to mess with. If anyone dares to ask Fengzi for anything, Lao Tzu will bite off a piece of their flesh. Fengzi should be fine for now. Wait for this old man to personally go and ask the godly doctor. In front of the godly doctor, I will take a closer look. Otherwise, this old man will feel uneasy. Chapter 678. Li Chengqian was dumbfounded. Cheng Chimo, who was rolling up his sleeves, almost stumbled and fell on his face. Strange. This matter was strange in every way. Logically speaking, the people in Tong Huifang were untouchable on this mountain. Because of Fengzi, these people worked very hard. They even fought to do the dirty and tiring work on a daily basis. He was always polite and amiable to everyone. In their own words, they could not embarrass Fengzi. But what was going on today? With great difficulty, the few of them helped Du Go to sit down on the large blue stone. Li Chengqian asked, "Tell me in detail, what exactly happened? If there is even the slightest bit of concealment, you know me." This was the first time Li Chengqian used his identity as the crown prince on the mountain. It was also the first time he used his identity in front of these people. At this moment, everyone could smell that something was wrong. When Du Go heard this, his face also became serious. He explained the matter from beginning to end. When he said this, everyone could not help but be dumbfounded. If Du Go was not wrong, old He and Zhu Zi's father were two honest people. Ever since Fengzi called them into the room, this problem had happened? And the moment they left the room, they started bawling? There were only two things that could cause these two men to be in so much pain. One was that their family members were no longer around, and the other was Li Chengqian's face suddenly changed. He asked, "Which one of you saw Fengzi this morning?" When Wei Shuyu heard this, she could not help but be shocked. "You mean something happened to Fengzi?" When Wei Shuyu said this, everyone's hearts could not help but thump. But at this moment, Zhang Sun stroked the fluffy beard on his chin and said, "It shouldn't be. In the morning, I saw him come out to pee. Apart from being a little weak, there was nothing wrong with this kid. He ate and drank as he should. However, this was before midnight." When everyone heard this, they could not help but turn pale with fright. Fengzi had started to have diarrhea 3 days ago. It had been 3 days. Logically speaking, he should have recovered by now, but he did not get out of bed these 3 days. Could it be? The few of them could not help but look at each other in shock. Leaving Du Go behind, they ran towards the mountain gate. Combined with what Du Go had said, they suddenly thought of something bad. After all, now that the academy was so famous, it was inevitable that there would be people who coveted and hated Fengzi, including Guanlong, the 7 major clans, Shandong, and the Imperial College. When everyone thought about this matter, they couldn't help but panic. As they ran, Li Chengqian no longer bothered to conceal his identity. He waved his hand at the Jinwu guards who were disguised as servants and guards, and everyone rushed toward Zhang Feng's wooden house. Chapter 679. In the entire Shao Mountain, the only one who didn't know about this matter was none other than Li Yuan, who was currently watching his villa being built bit by bit under the waterfall. At this moment, the people he brought up also displayed their talents. In a short 3 days, they took materials from the ground beside this waterfall and built a wooden house. It was even the kind with 2 floors. Moreover, they used bamboo to form a fence around the house. He looked like a scholar who lived in seclusion here. At this moment, Li Yuan was sitting on a Western region leather blanket. While looking at the boiling tea on the small stove on the table, he used a palm leaf fan to lightly fan himself. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the construction site in the distance. But gradually, Li Yuan also discovered that something was wrong. At the beginning, there seemed to be hundreds of people at the construction site. However, following the arrival of a group of guards, the people here slowly decreased by a lot. Until now, there was not a single person at the construction site. Instead, those guards were increasing in number. Although Li Yuan didn't recognize these guards, from their orderly movements and standing posture, he could tell that these were the golden guards of the palace. In the entire mountain, other than the ones he brought himself, only Li Chengqian could bring out these guards. Li Yuan frowned and lightly hooked his finger. Standing behind him, the old eunuch who was like an old monk in meditation hurriedly bowed. Did something happen over there? Why is there not a single one of these people? This old servant doesn't know. Go investigate. Li Yuan was somewhat angry. Originally, he wanted to personally witness the house that belonged to him being built bit by bit. This was also an interesting thing. However, now this sudden increase in golden guards made him smell something unusual. Not long after, the old eunuch still found out and hurried over. Without waiting for him to enter, the old eunuch hurriedly said, old master, something bad has happened. Something bad has happened. You sure know how to say old man. Zhang Feng, that brat, I heard something happened to that brat. He was assassinated by someone. Hearing this, Li Yuan's hand trembled. The tea stove on the table was instantly knocked over by him. What did you say? Li Yuan's voice was so cold that it scared people to death. It made everyone around him tremble and uniformly kneel on the ground. This old servant doesn't know. Bastard. Men, follow me to take a look. Pass down my order to the golden guards to seal off Shao Mountain. If anything happens to Feng Zi, all of you will be buried with him. Li Yuan was furious. After so many years, this was the first time he had met such an interesting kid. Moreover, this brat dared to throw a tantrum at him. He had long regarded Zhang Feng as his confidant, but he had just gone up the mountain and encountered such a thing which made his heart suddenly ache. What is this? This was slapping his old face. Li Yuan. Once Li Yuan was enraged, it was bound to cause a world-shaking incident. However, at this time he still didn't know Zhang Feng's specific situation. Therefore, Li Yuan could only treat him as an elder. He had several people carry the sliding pole and run wildly towards the mountain gate, where Zhang Feng's residence was located. However, when he arrived with his men, the place was already filled with a sea of people. Everyone in Tonghui Lane was currently holding knives and shovels in their hands, glaring angrily at everyone. Just like that, they guarded Zhang Feng's door and refused to budge an inch. Meanwhile, Li Chengqian and the rest were also confronting this old village chief. Old thing, are you going to budge or not? If you don't budge, do you believe that Lao Tzu will slaughter you? Ching Chimo shouted in anger. He wanted to grab the old village chief, but before his hand could grab the old village chief, Zheng Tufu's huge butcher's knife had already chopped down on his hand. According to this momentum, as long as Cheng Chimo's hand grabbed the old village chief, his hand would also be gone. Under the horrified gaze of the crowd, Cheng Chimo hurriedly retracted his hand and glared at Zheng Tufu. Zheng Tufu's black tower-like body slowly moved in front of the old village chief. Behind him was his son. Although he was not taller than him, his bulging muscles still made Cheng Chimo's eyelids twitch. Behind the two of them, Ma Zhou's hands were also trembling as he pointed at the few people. This made Cheng Chimo instantly feel a chill in his crotch. He hurriedly took 3 steps back and glared angrily at Zheng Tufu. He said, "Rebel, rebel. Are you all trying to rebel? Rebel? I've long heard that the 4 great demon kings are rude and unreasonable. It's true. Dear villagers, have you all seen this? These people are the stubborn people of Chang'an City. They are known as the 4 great demon kings of Chang'an. Although they were influenced by your dean and came to the academy, you all have seen that they have been angering the dean all day long. That's why the dean suffered such a great calamity. Tell me, are they speaking human language now? No, beast. You are simply worse than beasts. The dean is such a good person. Why did he befriend such heartless and unscrupulous brothers like you? It's all thanks to the dean treating you so well. Now you're saying that we're rebelling? Good. Good. We more than 5,000 people on Shao Mountain. How about rebelling for the dean today?" Just when Li Chengqian and the others were unable to resist, Li Yuan's dignified and cold voice that made people tremble all over rang out behind the crowd. "If you dare to rebel, come, kill all of you for the old man. Leave no one alive." This time, Zhang Feng was even more dumbfounded. Old master, what's going on? What's wrong? You still have the nerve to ask me what's wrong? Why don't you ask this old thing what's wrong? Li Yuan was furious. He glared at the old village chief and roared. He almost shouted at the people outside to chop the old village chief into pieces. Zhang Feng scratched his head full of question marks and asked, Old village chief, what's going on? The old village chief took a deep breath and glared at Zhang Feng. He asked, Fengzi, I ask you, tell me honestly, how many is this? While speaking, the old village chief stretched out 3 fingers. Zhang Feng was speechless. Isn't this 2? What's going on? Hurry up and tell me. When the old village chief heard this, he sat on the ground and cried, You little bastard, do you know that you almost killed everyone in Tong Hui Fang? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He hurriedly stood up and asked, Old village chief, get up first. Tell me what's going on. What's going on? Let me ask you, what did you say to old he and the others just now? I watched them grow up and never lie. When they left your house, they wailed and cried, saying that you're about to die. Now give me an explanation. What's going on? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. However, after looking around, he looked at Zheng Tufu. To be precise, he looked at the pig slaughtering knife that was trembling so much that it looked like it would fall at any moment. He asked, Old Zheng, tell me what's going on. I don't know. I was learning about castration from old Gao. Suddenly, someone said that you were harmed by a villain. That's why I came here with the pig slaughtering knife. Kid, if you don't give me an explanation today, old man will beat you up as soon as you leave the house. If you're willing to beg me, old man might protect you from death. Li Yuan saw that Zhang Feng was fine, but he could not swallow the anger in his heart. He said fiercely. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes, which could be considered an answer to Li Yuan. After inquiring about the situation outside again, the old village chief asked with a face full of worry. Kid, what did you do? The whole mountain knows that you've been harmed. If it wasn't for this old man rushing over, you might have been bleeding. The more Zhang Feng listened, the more his expression changed. In the end, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. Sir, just now it was me. I hope you won't lower yourself to the same level as us commoners. The moment the old village chief went out, he bowed to Li Yuan in front of everyone's shocked eyes. Li Yuan waved his hand and sighed. This is all caused by this bastard. You guys also saw it. This brat is a tortoise, a scourge. Are you relieved now? Relax, relax. What could the old village chief say? He hurriedly bowed and sent Li Yuan away. Following Li Yuan's departure, there were also the Jinwu guards disguised as guards, as well as Gan Ziyuan and the others. Only at this moment did the old village chief sigh angrily and said, Everyone disperse. You all heard that bastard's voice just now. You're living better than anyone else. Just now was a misunderstanding. Everyone go and work. When you're free, I'll let that brat give you an explanation. When everyone heard this, they repeatedly said that they didn't dare to accept it. Only then did they slowly leave. Listening to the waves of pig-like screams in the room, who would dare to let Zhang Feng give them an explanation? If this brat did something bad and vented his anger on them, then the ones who would suffer would be them, although the people had dispersed. But this matter still became a joke at the Xingshan construction site. The matter of the dean being a tortoise also became Zhang Feng's label at this moment. It was just that at this moment, their dean was currently in a life and death contest in the room. The few of them only stopped panting after fighting for a quarter of an hour. To put it bluntly, they were pitying Zhang Feng. This brat had just walked out from the state of being jerked. At this moment, he was beaten up by the few of them. Now he was paralyzed on the bed, like a soft noodle, constantly sticking out his tongue. Du Go and the others were not in a good state either. Although Zhang Feng could not beat them, his fingernails were long, and he scratched them in handfuls. Everyone's hair was disheveled now, and the streaks of blood on their faces were quite visually shocking. Tell me, Lao Tzu is sleeping well, and he's still a patient. Who did Lao Tzu offend? Zhang Feng cried. Du Go snorted twice, pointed at his own face and roared. Damn, you still feel wronged? It's all your fault, you bastard. Look at me being beaten up. Look at this, it's that girl steamed bun who pinched it for me. Tell me, how should I compensate? Chapter 683. Zhang Mansion. Isan Pastry Shop. At this time, the sun was setting. Zhang Shan was humming a tune and fiddling with the beads on his abacus. He looked at the beggars at the door fighting for the crumbs of pastries handed out by the servant. He sighed and said, "Are there any pastries left? Give them some." The servant pouted unhappily and said, "Master, aren't you too much? These kids have been squatting here all day, waiting for you to give them a bite to eat. Besides, my family has been eyeing these pastries for a long time. If you are kind, give me a few pieces." Zhang Shan laughed and scolded, "You only know how to eat. Don't think I don't know that your whole family has gone to the son-in-law's academy to eat and drink. Do you still care about this? If you want, you can take some back tomorrow when there are fewer beggars here." The servant pouted. He snorted in his heart, "A family of good people. It's not easy to find a son-in-law. Why is he also a good person? No, he is a fool. 20,000 dawn of grain is given to those poor beggars so easily." He had forgotten that at this time, if his whole family had not gone to Shao Mountain, they would have taken their bowls and begged for food. The servant took out a small dustpan from the back room. There were some pastries in it. When Zhang Shan was not paying attention, the servant put a piece into his embroidered robe. Then, he reluctantly threw the pastries in the dustpan to a group of beggars. At this time, a beggar looked at Zhang Shan and said, "Philanthropist Zhang, I just saw the young lady who often comes to see the young lady." Zhang Shan said, "Oh," without raising his head. The beggar said while eating the pastries, "She was holding a pair of scissors." A large group of people followed behind her. The young lady was crying. Hearing this, Zhang Shan finally put down the brush and abacus in his hand and asked, "Is what you said true? Then you..." Before he finished speaking, his eyes instantly swept over old he and Zhu Zi's father who were not far away from the shop. They were walking towards him listlessly. When Zhang Shan saw them, his heart skipped a beat. He rushed out of the shop and asked, "You too, did you come from Abandoned Mountain?" Seeing Zhang Shan, old he and old he's faces turned bitter. They told Zhang Shan about Zhang Feng's situation. Hearing this, Zhang Shan's face suddenly changed. He shouted at the snack shop, "Erwazi, call people. Take the weapons and follow master to Shao Mountain." The servant named Erwazi was shocked by Zhang Shan's angry shout. He had been doing odd jobs in the dessert shop for 3 years. Master Zhang was always smiling. When had he ever seen him so angry? In an instant, Erwazi did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly entered the house from the back door. As soon as he entered, he shouted, "Everyone come out." When the old butler heard this, he walked out of the accounting room and cursed, "You uncultured thing. Is this a place where you can bark?" Something happened to Master Butler. Master asked everyone in the family to bring their weapons to Shao Mountain. The butler was shocked when he heard this and hurriedly ran out of the house. When he saw Zhang Shan's expression, he instantly became anxious. "Someone come. Men in the family, as long as you can still walk, come out for old man. Take the weapons. Someone come. Are you all dead?" The old butler's loud shout instantly alarmed Madame Zhang and Yu Yao. The two women hurriedly sent a maid to ask. Something happened. Something happened to Shao Mountain. Master is now running away with 2 crying faces from the Shao Mountain son-in-law's academy. Hearing this, Zhang Yuyao almost fainted. "Shao Chuier, quickly prepare the carriage. Go to Shao Mountain." For a moment. From Chang'an University to Taotong Huifang, and then to the depths of the palace, there were rumors everywhere. Li Shimin, who was discussing matters with Du Ruhui and the others, was suddenly interrupted by Shao Gizi, who suddenly broke in. Shao Gizi did not have time to explain and hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, I just received news in Chang'an, and that something happened to Shao Mountain. It seems that Zhang Feng is dying." Now the people who came down from the abandoned mountain. What did you say? Say it one more time. When Li Shimin heard that, his expression suddenly changed greatly. Xiao Gizi was shocked and hurriedly repeated. Just now the Crown Prince's junior tutor, Mr. Li Gang, sent news from Chang'an University that something happened to Zhang Feng. At this time, he has already gone to Xiao Mountain. Li Shimin heard this and fell on the dragon throne. He asked in a trembling voice, "Then has there been any news from the Crown Prince and the Jinwu guards?" Xiao Gizi thought for a moment and said, "There hasn't been any news." Hearing this, Li Shimin's anxious heart could not help but relax a little. As long as there was no news from the Crown Prince and the Jinwu guards, it would be fine. He waved his hand and said, "Quickly send someone to ask what happened." "Yes." Report. Report from Xiao Mountain. At this time, a scout hurriedly entered the imperial study. Li Shimin and the others heard this and all stood up with a bang, looking at the person who came in with shock. The scout hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, Xiao Mountain. Speak." Li Shimin waved his hand and said in a cold voice. The scout trembled all over. He hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, there is news from Xiao Mountain. They are fine." "Fine?" Li Shimin and the others could not help but exclaim in unison. "Are you sure?" Several people asked in unison again. The scout's face that was covered in cold sweat trembled. He hurriedly said, "This is news from the retired emperor's personal eunuch." Old man can guarantee that your 2 wives will definitely come. Ha ha. While speaking, Li Yuan and Sun Simiao both laughed loudly, completely ignoring Zhang Feng, who had a dumbfounded expression. Zhang Feng was also anxious. He scampered outside and saw a few people looking down the mountain with their buttocks sticking out. He couldn't help but climb up the sentry post and stick his head out, sticking his butt out. Seeing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of this possibility. At the thought of the 2 crying girls going up the mountain, Zhang Feng's head started to hurt. "That, Li Gan, you take care of it. My head suddenly hurts, I want to." Zhang Feng was just about to slip away, but how could Li Chengqian let him go? He and Du Go each held him down with one hand. Only then did they say with a smile that wasn't a smile, "You brat, you want to slip away after causing trouble? Just stay here obediently." Zhang Feng's face instantly turned bitter. He could only watch as the people at the foot of the mountain slowly approached the top. Not long after, Zhang Sun rushed back with a strange expression. He stared at Zhang Feng playfully and said, "Come down, my Lord Viscount. Your 2 wives are coming up with knives to denounce you." Hearing this, Zhang Feng's vision went black and his head fell down. However, he hit the handrail on the side of the sentry post, making him even more dizzy. He simply sat down on the ground and sighed to the sky. Motherf **Ker, what kind of people are these? They can't even do something well. I've met a bad person. I've met a bad person. However, no matter how much he struggled and yelled, it was useless. At this time, he had already rushed to the mountain gate. First, it was the old scholar, Zhang Shan, and old he. As soon as they entered the mountain gate, they grabbed Zhang Suan's collar and asked, "Brat, what did you do to Fengzi? Where is Fengzi?" Zhang Sunchong was completely dumbfounded by this. However, without waiting for him to speak, his body suddenly trembled, and he felt a piercing cold. He could only stand obediently, not daring to move at all. At this time, Jingshu didn't waste any words. She looked coldly at Zhang Sun, a pair of scissors pressed against his neck, and asked coldly, "Where is my husband?" Zhang Sun was about to faint. At this time, the people on the sentry post opened their eyes wide, and their jaws were about to drop. At this time, they were stunned and couldn't say a word. Seeing that he didn't speak, the swaying Zhang Yuyao grabbed Zhang Suan's neck and asked in a shrill and trembling voice, "Young master son, may I ask, where is my husband?" Zhang Sun was crazy. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and looked at the people around him who were raising their hammers high, as if they would fly away if he said yes. He said in a trembling voice, "Zhang Feng, your second uncle, why don't you fart?" Chapter 686. Cheng Chimo's voice was heard. The people who had just gone up the mountain followed Cheng Chimo's gaze and looked at the person on the sentry post. Although it was dark and only a little bit of torchlight swayed in the wind, the people could still vaguely see a young man in cyan leaning on the railing and looking down foolishly. That person, if not Zhang Feng, who was he? Feng Zi. Zhang Feng. Prince Zhang. Immediately, the people exclaimed. Zhang Feng slapped his face. Before he could express his feelings, Wei Shiyu kicked him on the butt and kicked him down the sentry post. Fortunately, Cheng Chimo was below. Even if he was a jerk, he reached out a hand and firmly caught Zhang Feng, so that he would not make a fool of himself in public. At this moment, Li Yuan and Sun Simiao, who were in the room, were accompanied by Old Gao and Old Village Chief. They stood on the doorstep and watched for a while with smiles on their faces. Li Yuan rubbed his belly and said, "Old Village Chief, go prepare a table of the dishes that Feng Zi taught you." How could the village chief not know the seriousness of the matter? Not to mention anything else, this Sun Simiao did not dare to be negligent. Moreover, who was the old man in white following the old elementary scholar? Although the old village head did not know, but he could imagine that the old man from Chang'an University, other than the old elementary scholar, could only be the Crown Prince's junior master, Li Gang. At that time, this matter caused an earthquake in Chang'an City. The news that the young master of the Crown Prince resigned and went to teach at Chang'an University also made the people in Tonghuifang straighten their backs. At this time, Zhang Feng's 2 wives and father-in-law came. No matter what, this was also Zhang Feng's home. How could there be no wine in this house? Zhenghuazi, what are you waiting for? Go and slaughter the sheep and the chickens. Old He, don't just stand there. Go and slaughter some pigs with Zhenghuazi. Remember, it's mainly their hind legs and tails. Guzi Zhuzi, you 2 brats. Go and get the beggar's chicken. Steamed bun. Follow your mother to the wine cellar to move the wine. The old village chief waved his walking stick and shouted as he walked. Although it was the middle of the night and most of the people were gathered at the mountain gate to watch the show, once the old village chief shouted, everyone dispersed. As for Xiao Xiao, who was following Jingshu, the moment she saw steamed bun, she bared her teeth and hugged steamed bun in her arms, refusing to let him go anywhere. The 2 girls hadn't seen each other for a long time. At this time, Xiao Xiao took out a bag of snacks from her small pocket. The 2 girls looked at Zhang Feng, Jingshu, Zhang Yuyao, and Han Xian. They ate while giggling nonstop. Embarrassed, Zhang Feng glared at the 2 little girls, which instantly made Jingshu furious. She hugged Xiao Xiao and held steamed bun in her hand. She didn't even look at Zhang Feng and entered the house. There was no choice. There were too many people here, and the only habitable house was Zhang Feng's. She hurriedly entered the house and heaved a deep sigh of relief. Zhang Yuyao's cheeks were also burning. She wanted to say something to Zhang Feng. However, seeing that there were people all around, she could only stomp her feet in anger and follow Jingshu into the house. This time, they couldn't enter the house. Everyone could only light a bonfire on the flat ground at the mountain gate. Everyone sat cross-legged around the bonfire and asked Zhang Feng what he was doing. Zhang Feng was speechless. Shrugging his shoulders, he looked at the crowd and said, "As you can see, I'm still alive and kicking. And I fell from such a high place and nothing happened. No, we're asking, what the hell are you doing today? Do you know that old He and the others spread the news of you to the foot of the mountain? Do you know that Chang'an City was almost turned upside down?" First, Jingshu rushed to Xiao Mountain with a pair of scissors, and then the Zhang mansion rushed to the city gate with a stick. Do you think you haven't made enough trouble? The old Xiaocai was so angry that his beard was trembling. Is this Prince Zhang Feng? At this time, an old man in white clothes and white beard, who was sitting between Li Yuan and the old Xiaocai, glanced at Zhang Feng and asked. Zhang Feng was shocked. He looked at the old man's clothes and hurriedly stood up. Are you the Crown Prince's master, Mr. Wenji? I, Zhang Feng, am here to pay my respects to Mr. Wenji. Zhang Feng saw that Li Gang didn't say anything and just looked at him indifferently, as if he wanted him to give an explanation. Zhang Feng said helplessly, "In fact, this is a misunderstanding. I've thought many times about what kind of situation I would meet Mr. Wenji, but today, I hope Mr. Wenji won't take offense. What happened today wasn't my intention. My intention was. Zhang Feng could only recount the whole thing that he explained to Li Yuan and the others once more. Li Gang frowned and ignored Zhang Feng. Instead, he looked at the old Xiaocai and asked, Brother Zihuai, was the magical wine you gave me before made by Zhang Feng? The old Xiaocai nodded. After thinking about the ins and outs of the matter, he sighed and said, Fengzi, you also know that old he and the others are dull people. In the future, although they can be smooth and sly, it depends on the person. Look at how you scared old he and the others. Look at us old bones. If old man's guess is right, the mountain is not peaceful today, is it? Chapter 687. As the old scholar spoke, he glanced at Li Yuan. He knew Li Yuan, and Li Yuan naturally also knew the old scholar. However, at this moment, the two of them only cupped their fists. I didn't expect Brother Li to also come. The old elementary scholar sighed. Li Yuan smiled and said, Since I parted with Brother Zihuai, it's been almost 10 years. Brother Zihuai is just like before. After the two of them simply greeted each other, it could be considered that the previous contradiction was resolved. And the old scholar also finally understood the meaning of the Li royal family from Li Yuan's words. That meaning was self-evident. They had no intention of finding trouble with him at all. If they did, how could he live comfortably in Chang'an city until now? Perhaps they already knew about him, but he himself was still brooding over the matter of the Sui dynasty. The old scholar shook his head and no longer said anything. He changed the topic and said, This kid's nature isn't bad. This time, as you can see, it's a misunderstanding. I hope Brother Li can be more forgiving. Ha ha ha, Brother Zihuai, you still don't know? In this Chang'an University, you're the chancellor and also the dean. But in this White Deer College, old man is already the honorary vice dean. If he didn't know this kid's temperament, do you think old man would come to this place? The two of them looked at each other, and Zhang Feng's head was about to explode. Won't come here? That's good. Go down the mountain right now. I guarantee that gongs and drums will fill the sky, and firecrackers will sound all the way to send you off. Zhang Feng couldn't wait for the old man to go down the mountain right now. This old guy seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. His myriad of tricks couldn't escape old man Li's eyes. This feeling was very unpleasant. But the old man didn't go down the mountain, and had plans to stay here permanently. This made Zhang Feng somewhat embarrassed, but he couldn't do anything about Li Yuan. At this moment, listening to Li Yuan's words, Zhang Feng could only roll his eyes. And in his heart, he was also silently guessing the old scholar's identity. Brother Zihuai? Time separated? This old elementary scholar was something. The mysterious Confucian scholar was also acquainted with the Crown Prince's junior tutor, Li Gang. It seemed that the two of them had a close relationship. Furthermore, he seemed to be an old acquaintance of the old Master Li, who was a merchant. This made Zhang Feng even more curious. However, the two of them only spoke simple words that Zhang Feng couldn't understand at all. Then, the two of them went from ignoring each other to putting their arms around each other's shoulders. This was what shocked Zhang Feng the most. This was awesome. This was truly awesome. Li Gan, is this how the old man makes friends? Zhang Feng kicked Li Chengqian, who was sitting next to him, and asked. Li Chengqian glanced at the old scholar, and randomly made up a reason. 10 years ago, my old man met the old scholar on the business road. But later he encountered the Sui dynasty incident. This parting was as long as 10 years. Previously he saw that the old scholar looked familiar, but he didn't confirm it. Finally, when Chang'an University opened, he suddenly remembered. But he didn't know what the two old men were playing at. If you want to know, go ask the two old men. Li Chengqian didn't lower his voice. On the contrary, he basically gave everyone an explanation. Naturally, Li Yuan and the old scholar could also hear it. But Li Gang just remained silent. He looked at Zhang Feng with a smile and said, Kid, to be able to gain Brother Zihuai's favor, your future is limitless. But by all means don't go astray. Don't let Brother Zihuai be bitterly disappointed. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. But he still got up and respectfully saluted. I'll remember it. I say, Brother Wenji, don't scare him. This kid has always been timid. Today's matter, you all understand now. It's all a misunderstanding. I hope you can give me some face. Brother Zihuai, you worry too much. If it weren't for this kid's character, courage, and insight, as well as this so-called innovation and popularizing the common people, do you think Old Man and the others are idle? Old Man, Brother Li said that in a few days, Brother Bashi will also come up the mountain to teach. At that time, us old men will also have a good time on this mountain. Sun Simiao stroked his beard and laughed. Hearing this, the old scholar was shocked and hurriedly asked, Brother Li, is Brother Bashi really coming up the mountain? Li Yuan laughed loudly. Looking at Zhang Feng, who didn't know whether to stand or sit, he said, It's all because of this kid's trick that Brother Bashi was fascinated. Otherwise, do you think Brother Bashi would suddenly stop writing and then announce that he would come up the mountain in a high-profile manner? It's all because of this kid's trick. Hearing this, everyone looked at Zhang Feng in great shock. Zhang Feng laughed awkwardly and said, Don't listen to the old man's nonsense. This kid can invite Mr. Bashi. That's also based on my ability. Moreover, Mr. Bashi has a discerning eye. That's why he came up the mountain. It's not some kid's trick. If this spreads out, this kid won't have any face. Ha ha ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Although everyone more or less knew a little, but at this time, hearing Zhang Feng say this, everyone was really stunned. Who was Bashi? Yu Shinan was one of the 4 great Confucian scholars of the present age. He was also the emperor's favorite person. Since this kid was able to poach him, he must be really talented. Moreover, this matter happened in a small tavern, so people only knew a few words about it. Chapter 688. Conversations with Scholars. Especially with these great scholars, especially with his elders, it was a very troublesome thing. When he thought of his previous life, when he followed his elders out, Zhang Feng suddenly felt that it was nothing. Even if his face was pinched and his head was pulled out, at least he could understand what they were saying. But now? This was a kind of **king torture. This was simply not a place for people to stay. Cheng Chimo and the others had already run away, along with the several big black men behind Li Gang, as well as the stubborn Chang and university students. Zhang Feng was so angry that his teeth itched. That direction was clearly the place where he hid his wine. When he saw the chicken and duck in Zhang Suan's hands, Zhang Feng's head was dizzy. These bastards ate Lao Tzu's food, drink Lao Tzu's food, and now they **king treat Lao Tzu as heir in front of him? Moreover, he couldn't run away even if he wanted to now. He could only look at the fire with his head down, and use the fire stick to poke at the blazing flames on the bonfire. Then, under Zhang Feng's aghast gaze, Jingshu, holding the zither, and Zhang Yuyao leisurely passed by him without even looking at him. In this way, they joined Cheng Chimo and the others' bonfire party, causing waves of wolf howls. Zhang Feng was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, when Jingshu's zither sounded, Li Yuan and the others also stopped talking, pointed at Zhang Feng, and then suddenly burst into a burst of loud laughter. Forget it, forget it. Let's not leave this kid here. This kid is probably going crazy now. The old elementary scholar had been observing Zhang Feng the entire time. He had known that this kid would not be able to sit still. However, he knew all of these people, and had a good relationship with them, so he hadn't had the time. Now that he heard the sound of the zither, he dismissed Zhang Feng. Seeing Zhang Feng withdraw, Li Yuan looked meaningfully at the old Xiaocai and said, Brother Zihuai, for so many years, the few of us outside have always been worried about you. I didn't expect that you would find such a good seedling when you arrived. Not bad, not bad. We are really envious. Hearing this, the old scholar sighed and said, Brother Li, what are you saying? This kid Zhang Feng is very talented. This old man is old. I can only help him a little when I can still move. To be honest, at the beginning, I really wanted to accept him as my disciple, but you all know what happened to him later, especially Brother Li. This kid is not a fish in a pond. But fortunately, to be able to witness him slowly grow up from decadence, this old man's life is not in vain. Li Gang sighed and said, Brother Zihuai, I think you are treating this kid as your own child? Hearing this, the old scholar was silent. After a moment he shook his head and sighed. The three of them disappeared into the darkness. This made Zhang Feng sigh with emotion. What kind of F***king logic was this? But at this time he couldn't care so much. He only shouted at the three of them. Go easy on them. We're all brothers. Don't play dirty. Don't worry. This is the way these two idiots work. They can't bear to see others stronger than them. If they don't fight, they won't be able to live peacefully on the mountain in the future. Zhang Feng couldn't help but have a headache. He glared at Li Chengqian and said, What kind of playthings did you find for me? Li Chengqian spread out his hands. These are all talents. Although you saw their stubborn side, you didn't see their stubborn side. So in the future, Zhang Feng was speechless. He glared at Li Chengqian and said, Lao Tzu doesn't care about these things. Let me give you a word of advice. Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew. In the future, I'll leave their harmony to you. If anyone dares to cause trouble on the mountain, get lost. This will be included in the school rules. If anyone dares to cause trouble or fight, there's no need for a reason. Those who beat others, beat them to death and throw them down the mountain. Those who were beaten, get lost from Lao Tzu. Li Chengqian was stunned. Why should those who were beaten get lost? Aren't the victims wronged? Zhang Feng spread his hands. If you can't beat them, it's because of personal reasons. Cowards. Our White Deer College doesn't accept cowards. What kind of logic was this? Li Chengqian was speechless. In the end, he shook his head and pointed at the remaining stubborn people. What about them? No, get lost. If anyone can get into the top 3 of Chang'an University this season, come. If you can't even get into the top 3, how can you have the face to come to White Deer College? In an instant, those people were pissed off, but there was nothing they could do. When they came in, they were forced to come in. Now that they saw how good the mountain was, who wouldn't be envious? There was no other way. Everyone could only hang their heads. Under Li Chengqian's signal, they went down the mountain dejectedly. However, the anger in many people's eyes was filled with a sense of unwillingness to admit defeat. Li Chengqian didn't notice this. However, Zhang Feng didn't care. Because if they were too stubborn, the atmosphere on the mountain would be foul. If they didn't get rid of their ruffians, they would get lost sooner or later. Why not give them a chance? Whether or not they could go up the mountain would depend on their luck. This matter was settled. Zhang Feng rubbed his belly and said, Let's eat, let's eat. Lao Tzu hasn't touched a drop of water since this afternoon. However, when Zhang Feng was about to grab the lamb leg, Li Chengqian stopped him with a smile. It's rare for so many important people to be here today. Kid, you made such a fuss. Shouldn't you do something? Chapter 690. Fengzi, what you did today was not right. What do you think will happen if you don't do something about it? Dugo was still twisting his neck and swinging his arms as he spoke. He looked like he wanted to challenge Zhang Feng again. Zhang Sun then leaned in front of Zhang Feng's ear and fanned the flames. Actually, it's nothing. I just don't want you to be a bachelor. Now that your father-in-law is sitting there, and Li Gang is also here, do you want to rely on your 2 mouths to keep them here? Why don't you think about why they're willing to stay here? Now that you've done this and they know about it, it means that Chang'an City is in chaos. Do you still want Yu Shinan to go up the mountain? Zhang Feng glanced at Jing Shu, who was playing the zither, and then looked at Zhang Yuyao, who was whispering to him while hugging a steamed bun. He could not help but feel a little awkward. Li Chengqian saw that Zhang Feng was still playing dumb. He could not help but look up and say, The wind is blowing, the moon is like a hook, the lonely shadow on the cold river provokes the cold clothes. When Dugo heard that, he also stood up and drank a mouthful of wine. If it were not for the bruises on his face, his current appearance would have attracted the hearts of young girls. But now, It was already good enough that he could not hold back his laughter. However, he also recited. It rained night after night in the small tower. The bell in the corner tower rang with laughter, like a flourishing brocade, not like the flames of war in the human world. Good. Good poem. Young Master Du is really a role model for us. Young Master Li is not bad either. This poem has a deep meaning. Both of you are students of teachers. Both of you are so talented. Then our teachers, aren't they? The recitation of the two naturally attracted the students who had been hiding in the dark. Even Hao Chujun, Ma Zhou, and the others looked at the people sitting in the bonfire with flickering eyes. However, they also knew their identities and did not go forward. But after the two poems, these people could not sit still. They all went forward. And Li Chengqian and the others could not sit still either. You sang one song, I sang another, causing waves of exclamations. In the end, Cheng Chimo and the others also went up to recite poems. However, in the end, they only caused waves of laughter. Amidst the crowd's uproar, Jingshu was also pulled up and sang a poem, causing Li Yuan and the others to involuntarily join in the enjoyment by the bonfire. Even Zhang Yuyao, who had always been shy, walked out under the pull of xiao xiao and steamed bun. She recited a poem, and then hurriedly hid in Jingshu's embrace with a red face. In the end, Li Gang looked at Zhang Feng and smiled. I've always heard that Zhang Feng is a master of both poetry and poetry. Why are you so quiet tonight? Why don't you sing a song to liven things up? Ha ha ha, Brother Wenji, look at your appearance now. You clearly despise these brats' poems for being too lousy. Everyone, if you have any good poems, feel free to say them. As the honorary vice dean of White Deer College, the old man will take out 100 taels of gold as the prize tonight. If anyone's poem is good, not only will you get the 100 taels of gold, the old man will also guarantee that when the time comes for the official opening of the college, you will have the opportunity to directly enter the Great Confucian School. What do you think? Li Yuan could not help but use this sentence to fan the flames. Everyone could not help but be stunned. They looked at Li Yuan for a long time before coming back to their senses. Then someone asked excitedly, Old sir, what you said, does it count? Old man Li Gang, I'm sure everyone has heard of him. Moreover, even if you don't know the name of the old man, you will still remember the name of the godly doctor. Tonight, the old man and steamed bun will be the guarantor. What do you think? In an instant, everyone burst into an uproar. Crown Prince's junior tutor Li Gang. Teacher Wenji. To be able to be the Crown Prince's teacher, how could he be bad? Although he had retired, the title of Great Confucian was still shining, not to mention the godly Dr. Sun Simiao. Hearing this, Sun Simiao smiled faintly. Since Brother Li wants to play, then let's play to our heart's content tonight. The old man Yi is willing to take out 100 taels of gold as the bet. This time everyone could not sit still. In that case, I'll go first. Snow in front of the hall. Howling in the wind, skinny horses running in the wind, water in the snow in the water, like snow. Candlelight shadow, the moon is slightly curved, the night is slightly cold, the stars are dim and yellow. Yesterday, candlelight shadow. Many voices reciting poems sounded from around the bonfire. As more and more poems sounded, more and more people gathered around. Even those who had already fallen asleep could not help but stretch their heads out and listen to the clamor on the mountain. Their eyes revealed a tinge of envy. For hours later, after the wine and meat had dispersed, Hao Chujun came to the rescue. Guo Jingyi Ma Zhou and the others did not disappoint and fought hard. However, they could not compete for first place. In the end, as the dean, Zhang Feng, was pushed up by the crowd, everyone looked at Zhang Feng expectantly, waiting for him to compose a poem. Zhang Feng was also speechless. Once Lao Tzu made his move, would they still have a chance to survive? However, these few people that he had taken care of did not disappoint. After a flash of thought, he smiled and cupped his hands. He did not know what these people were thinking, but he knew that this was the time to show off his skills. This was the chance that old man Li gave him to establish his prestige. What he knew was not only limited to the 300 Tang poems. Bring me some wine, Zhang Feng shouted angrily. Cheng Chumo and the others rummaged around for a while. In the end, they only found a jar of wine under Zhang Feng's bed and handed it to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng opened the mud seal. Taking advantage of the time to find the wine, he also discussed all the poems in his memory and drank a mouthful of wine. Zhang Feng then pointed to the moon in the sky and shouted angrily, "When will the moon be bright?" With a cup of wine in my hand, I asked the blue sky, "I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace. I want to ride the wind and go back, but I am afraid of the Jade Palace. It is too cold at the top, dancing with the shadows. How is it like in the human world?" After Zhang Feng finished speaking, he drank again. What he didn't know was that at this time, on the entire peak of Shao Mountain, as long as someone was listening, they were all stunned at this time. Moreover, on the entire mountain, other than the sound of the wind and the explosion of the flames, there was no other sound. Even the sound of the insects could not be heard. At this time, Zhang Feng somewhat dizzily glared at Cheng Chimo. After looking at the words 65 degrees, written on the jar of wine, he somewhat wanted to curse. At this time, after 2 big gulps, he was somewhat drunk. After all, from the afternoon until now, his mouth did not have a single bite of food. Under this kind of fierce drinking, it would be strange if he could not get drunk. Turn the red pavilion low and beautiful house, illuminated without sleep. Following Zhang Feng's loud shout again, he seemed to be deranged, like a lunatic, but everyone had long been stupefied. The first thing Li Yuan did when he came back to his senses was to glare at the old eunuch behind him with a sharp gaze. The old eunuch understood and hurriedly found ink and paper to record in a hurry. Should not hate. How can the moon be round when we are apart? People have joys and sorrows, the moon waxes and wanes. This matter is difficult since ancient times. I hope that people will be together for a long time. With the last word, a gust of wind blew. A gust of wind blew. Under the moonlight, Zhang Feng's thin and weak body, coupled with his head raised to the sky to drink, looked so lonely and bleak under the contrast of the bonfire and the moonlight. Everyone was stupefied. Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu had already stepped forward with tears in their eyes. One on the left and one on the right, they held Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng continued to sing loudly. The world is a big dream. How many autumns are there in life? At night, the wind and leaves have already sounded in the corridor. Looking at the bun on my eyebrows, wine is cheap, often worried about the lack of guests. The moon is full of clouds, who will share the lonely light of the mid-autumn. A cup of desolation looking to the north. Chapter 692. This night was destined to be a crazy night, a sleepless night. But the night would eventually pass. Zhang Feng did not know when he passed out drunk, but when he woke up, it was already late in the morning. Other than the people who were working as usual, the old scholar, Jingshu, Zhang Yuyao, and the others left as if they had never been there. Quietly. If Zhang Feng had not seen the bonfire not far away, he would have thought that it was a long dream. Finally, when he was washing up, he suddenly saw 2 bright red lipstick marks on his cheeks. Zhang Feng was no longer calm. He quickly turned over the quilt, and when he saw that there was nothing on the sheets, he heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that last night was real, but what did Lao Tzu do last night? Gao can come out. Zhang Feng was also a little worried and shouted at the door. After a while, Gao Can, who looked like a wooden stake, slowly appeared in front of Zhang Feng. Although his nose was bruised and his face was swollen, one of his legs was lame, and one of his hands was drooping, Zhang Feng was speechless. However, although he had been beaten up, the dull look in his eyes had disappeared. Zhang Feng asked in surprise, "How long did you fight last night?" "About 2 hours. Who won?" "Me. Those 2 were knocked out by me." Zhang Feng was speechless. Looking at Gao Can, he could only give him a thumbs up. "Awesome. Oh right, what happened to me last night, do you know? You were drunk and howled for half the night. In the end you passed out. Your 2 wives took care of you until dawn. Those who went up the mountain all went down." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He continued to ask, "What did I do last night? I remember that I was reciting poems. What happened after that?" Gao Can scratched his head and said, "Last night, It seemed like you were the one shouting. Then there were more than 10 people behind Old Masterly writing. The rest of them didn't even dare to fart. They just stared at you. As for how much you recited, I don't know. I only know that you stood there for 4 hours. 4 hours? Does that mean that Lao Tzu recited a poem for 4 hours? F***ck. Could something have happened to him? Wasn't this 2F***king shocking? Li Bai had written hundreds of poems when he was drunk. How long had that been? This is a single breath of air. Wasn't this a little too shocking? Zhang Feng hurriedly asked. Then, what were their expressions in the end? Is there any reaction? Gao Kin thought for a moment, looked outside the door and said, they were all talking about monsters, perverts and whatnot. In the end, Mr. Li Gang and an old man called Zihuai looked worried, and went down the mountain that very night. They also said that no one was allowed to spread the news. Oh. When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but feel relieved. Fortunately, the old elementary scholar was here. Otherwise, there would have been trouble this time.